Amidst the endless sands rises a city with azure domes, where palm trees and flowers are like an oasis of life, and the reflections of the holiday are scattered across the carpet. In the heart of the city, a hall sparkles, drowning in flowers and snow-white draperies, where the carpet is strewn with delicate petals. Rose petals slowly swirl in the air, and the smiles and joy of people fill the space with light and anticipation of a miracle. In the very center of this splendor stands a girl in an elegant dress, her hair adorned with fresh flowers, and her gaze full of dreams. She walks along a shining path towards a man. The hall is filled with light, flowers, and a majestic coat of arms with a golden bird. Her blue eyes tremble with excitement, but she quietly whispers words of encouragement to herself and boldly takes a step towards her destiny. In the golden light of dawn, a young man whispers to himself with determination, "Pull yourself together, Lily Bush." Memories take us to a quiet village, where a girl with blue eyes catches a surprised look. Someone notices her resemblance to a person of royal blood, and this changes her destiny. A stern woman in a dark dress approaches the girl, her gaze full of interest. Thus begins the journey to the castle, where the walls hold many secrets and hopes. The girl becomes the royal maid and the double of the beautiful princess. All this happens because she bears a striking resemblance to Marian Erin Laura Louise Irula. The corridors of the castle are filled with the sound of footsteps and shouts, foreshadowing new trials and changes. The princess's voice sounds like the crack of a whip, and little Lily rushes to complete her next assignment. The paper falls to the floor and Lily quickly picks it up, catching a stern look on herself. The princess is irritated and urgently calls Lily, and in the girl's soul a dream is born of seeing goldfish in the pond. The majestic halls of the palace are filled with light, but for Lily they become a labyrinth of trials. The disappearance of a precious needle turns the day into a disturbing quest, and the threat of exile hangs in the air. In despair, Lily clenches her fists and decides she's had enough. She remembers her family and how important this job is because it feeds them for 4 months. Despite her fatigue and fear, Lily continues to search, believing that in just a little while she will succeed. In the rays of morning light, the girl in the blue dress dreams of holding on a little longer. She carries a tray of cups through the room filled with flowers and sparkle with a gentle smile. There is a tear in her eyes because the long-awaited day has finally arrived. The whole palace is filled with joy and flowers because the princess is getting married. She counted the days until this moment, dreaming of freedom and a new life. In her mind, she is sure that the princess will not take the humble maid with her. A hint of sadness and a slight hope for change appears in her gaze. In the silence of the great hall, she remains alone in the rays of the sun and her dreams. 6 months ago, the last sounds of war between the two great kingdoms died down. Victory came to Irula after 3 long years, but the land was scorched and the hearts of the people were full of pain. To prevent a new disaster, a peace treaty was concluded, sealed by a political marriage. The king tenderly protected his youngest daughter as if she were fragile crystal. But fate does not ask about feelings, and the palace doors open before a girl in a blue dress. Voices and laughter fill the room, and Lily, smiling, hurries to complete her next assignment. She endures the whims of the princess and the hot desert sun, dreaming only of holding out a little longer. But suddenly everything changes when the bride disappears just before her wedding. In a luxurious hall, under the rays of the morning sun, a girl in a blue dress bows before a stern advisor. There is alarm in his voice because the princess's wedding is in jeopardy, and there is very little time left. He orders that knights be sent immediately to find Her Highness and restore peace to the palace. The girl listens with surprise and fear to the news that a delegation from a neighboring kingdom has already arrived. In the golden light of the desert, caravans and horsemen greet guests, and among them a mysterious prince has already appeared. The advisor, in desperation, reports that the ceremony is required to be held immediately in order to fulfill the terms of an important agreement. The girl kneels before the advisor, her eyes reflecting anxiety and confusion. He looks at her intently and reminds her that it was her face that caused her fate, and now everything depends on her. The girl in the blue dress freezes in surprise when she hears that she will have to replace the princess. She falls to her knees in despair and begs him not to do this, but her pleas go unanswered. The advisor angrily reminds her that everything that happened is her fault, and that this marriage is important for the entire kingdom. There is a threat in his voice, because if the worst happens, everyone will lose their heads. The girl remembers with horror what her enemies are capable of and how dangerous this alliance is for everyone. The advisor leans towards her and asks her to pretend to be a princess for at least 1 day in order to save the country. He promises that after the wedding there will be a 2-week reception, and during this time they will find a real bride. In a shining hall, surrounded by flowers and light, a girl in a white dress slowly walks towards her destiny. Lily Bush walks along the path among flowers and light in the shining hall, her heart filled with anxiety and hope. Every step in a luxurious dress seems like a dream to her, and she does not believe that all this is happening in reality. The advisor's gaze is stern, and he reminds Lily not to remove the veil, because the secret must remain undisclosed. She remembers the promise that the real princess will be found and tries to act confident. Lily takes her groom's hand and mentally repeats that everything will be fine and no one will know the truth. The question of eternal love is heard under the vaults of the palace, and Lily, with a trembling voice, answers yes. The moment of exchanging rings arrives, and excitement and anticipation of a miracle are in the air. When the request to seal the marriage with a kiss is heard, Lily freezes, not believing that her life has changed so suddenly. Lily Bush, wearing a luxurious white dress, feels with alarm someone touching her veil. Inside, everything is clenched with excitement, but she tries not to show her feelings and holds her head high. At that moment, her gaze meets the golden eyes of the groom, which reflect a soft light and mystery. Amidst the flowers and the glow, Lily feels for the first time that her story is just beginning and that something amazing awaits her. A week before the wedding, in the sunny drawing room, Lily Bush brings tea to the princess in the red dress and hears an unexpected question. The princess, with a tired smile, invites Lily to take her place at the ceremony and marry the prince instead of her. Lily shyly replies that she doesn't understand such jokes and silently notes another strange request. The princess angrily says that she does not want this marriage and dreams of escaping from the palace, away from her fate. There is despair in her words, and she is sure that the death of the beautiful princess will be a tragedy for the entire kingdom. Lily remains silent, not knowing what to answer, and feels tension and sadness hanging in the air. The princess decides that she is leaving and no longer wants to be a victim of other people's decisions and political intrigues. She assures Lily that if she agrees to marry the prince, everything will be fine and life will be filled with joy again. In a cozy room, Lily Bush pours tea for the princess in a red dress and listens to her unusual proposals. The princess dreams of escaping her fate and asks Lily to take her place at the wedding with a prince from a distant land. Lily gently refuses because she can't pretend to be a princess even if their faces are as similar as 2 peas in a pod. The princess remembers that the groom only saw her portrait and believes that the deception might work. She reluctantly admits that Lily does look like her, but is certain that no one can become a real princess. Her words sound reproachful and sad because she considers Lily naive and not understanding all the difficulties of palace life. Lily wonders why, after all that has been said, the princess still wants to change places with her and wonders where she is going to go. The princess, smiling, assures that she will be taken care of and that she should not worry because everything has already been decided. Lily Bush is surprised to learn that the princess trusts her friend Willard and is planning to run away for love. Anxiety is born in Lily's soul because she is not sure of the sincerity of this aristocrat's intentions. The princess, with shining eyes, talks about her feelings and dreams of her own wedding far from the palace. Lily cannot understand why she is being asked to become someone's replacement and asks questions about her destiny. The princess easily replies that she doesn't see anything strange in this and doesn't understand Lily's worries. In desperation, Lily tries to explain that she is not ready for such a choice, but her words remain unheard. The princess is confident that Lily will cope with any difficulty because she is smart and will find a way out of any situation. Lily Bush anxiously decides to tell the Prime Minister about what is happening behind the scenes at the palace. In her heart, she feels like a sacrifice made for the sake of the princess's peace of mind. In a hall filled with white roses and soft light, the groom with golden eyes looks forward calmly and confidently. Lily Bush, wearing a white dress and a flower in her hair, stands among the flowers, her gaze full of excitement and timid hope. She catches herself thinking that she is afraid to meet his eyes because her heart is beating too loudly, and everything seems like a dream. Inside, there is an alarming thought that he might understand everything when their eyes meet and the secret is revealed. A voice asks Lily to put the ring on the groom's finger, and she takes the jewelry from the velvet pillow with trembling hands. The heroine carefully takes the ring with 2 fingers and lifts it from the pillow. Lily Bush slowly places the ring on her groom's finger amid white roses and the sparkle of crystal lights. At this moment, their eyes meet and an invisible spark of tenderness and excitement is born in the air. The girl lowers her eyes and feels how the decoration becomes a symbol of a new destiny and responsibility. The ring feels heavy, and Lily listens with bated breath to the words about the vow and the kiss. The groom gently touches her face, and their lips meet in a trembling kiss filled with light and hope. A solemn silence fills the hall, and somewhere off to the side, someone bows their head to the new couple. Lily feels her heart fill with timid joy, and for the first time allows herself to dream of happiness. Outside the palace windows, the sun's rays play on the petals of lilies, and a new chapter of her life begins. Lily Bush and the groom stand so close that their lips almost touch. Pink light fills the stage with tenderness. Their feet are next to each other on the ceremony carpet. Each step is taken with excitement and trepidation. Lily listens with a blush as their names are announced, her gaze full of confusion and hope. The host calls out the full names of the bride and groom. Lily squeezes his hand and feels responsible. Against the background of flowers, an inscription appears stating that the marriage is officially concluded. They stand together under the arches of the hall. After the ceremony, Lily sinks into a chair, exhaustion and relief reflected in her posture. An inner voice tells her that it's all over and she's done it, but the anxiety doesn't go away. The heroine notices the guests leaving and understands that a new unknown chapter awaits her. Lily Bush is stunned to hear that the wedding reception is being canceled and guests are planning to leave early. The advisors explain that the delegation must return home before the drought sets in, and that this is an important state issue. Lily panics as she thinks about what will happen to her if everyone leaves, and her anxiety is reflected in her wide-open eyes. The servants discuss the bride's need to hurry with preparations for departure and report that the pursuit squad has not yet found the fugitive. The advisor silently watches what is happening, his face remaining stern and tense. Lily sits alone in a blue dress, her face expressing fatigue and confusion about the future. The servants remind her that she needs to hide her feelings, as a gloomy appearance can arouse suspicion in others. The advisor says there is no other way out and asks Lily to leave this place, promising to deal with the rest of the matters himself. The advisor leads Lily Bush down the corridor and tells her that without this opportunity, a commoner like her would never have become the prince's wife. Lily looks down and hears that she was lucky to get this chance only because of unusual circumstances. Inside, she is outraged, because for her this situation is not the ultimate dream, but a difficult test. The girl stops and mentally repeats that everything that is happening seems unfair and strange to her. The advisor sharply reminds Lily that she should be grateful for her life, since it was she who helped the princess escape. Lily is shocked and cannot believe that she is now destined to become the prince's wife instead of her real bride. The advisor warns that she survived only because she looks like a princess and should not forget this. The girl anxiously thinks about what will happen if the prince finds out the truth after leaving and what awaits her in the future. Lily Bush stands in the shadow of the tent and quietly says that everything that is happening has nothing to do with her, her voice sounding confused. She watches the servant who sets the peg and thinks about the fate of Princess Marion. Anxiety does not leave her. Despair appears inside Lily because she understands that it is simply impossible to change anything now. The advisor looks at her and notes that Lily is smarter than she seems. His gaze becomes attentive and cold. He says that she absorbs everything like a sponge and advises her to think for herself how to behave further. Lily listens to his words and feels a growing determination inside her not to give up despite her fear. She stands on the threshold of the tent in the evening light and for the first time in a long time feels the strength to take a new step. Strength and hope appear in her eyes because now Lily is ready to fight for her destiny no matter what. Lily Bush stands in the semi-darkness of the tent and listens as the advisor demands that she think with her own head and behave with dignity. Her eyes reflect anxiety when he reminds her that she must fulfill her duties every day because she was recognized as a daughter and protected all this time. The advisor, with a cold smile, tells Lily to remain silent as if she were a shadow and should not show any emotion. They walk down the hall, and he says that only the fact of marriage into the royal family is important, and the identity of the bride is not important. The advisor assures that the king is unlikely to ever visit his daughter, who has left for another country, and in the end, everything will resolve itself. Lily realizes with horror that as soon as the real princess is found, she herself will not be spared and will be disposed of without regret. The advisor says with a grin that the knights are sure that it was the maid who ran away, not the princess, and no one will pity the thief. An image of a girl in a red dress, shrouded in a bloody shadow, appears in Lily's mind, and she understands how dangerous her new role is. The advisor, with a cold smile, reports that the investigation revealed that the girl still has family in Irul. He warns that if she wants to protect her loved ones, she will have to watch her every action. The girl lowers her head and feels how fear constrains her movements, but determination is born inside. She suddenly jumps up and runs out of the tent, not allowing the advisor to see her tears. Outside, the sun is bright and the wind is playing with her hair, while servants are bustling around and packing things for departure. Alarming rumors are heard in the crowd, and someone whispers whether they really want to kill Princess Marion. Among people in headscarves, papers and plans are discussed, and the girl clenches her fists and cannot believe what is happening. She looks at the camp and thinks that she has seen a lot of meanness in the palace, but now for the first time she feels all the danger and loneliness. The wind plays with the hem of the dress, and an anxious question appears in the soul, whether there really is enough strength to go this way. A doubt arises in my thoughts whether I should confess my weakness to the Prime Minister or trust the prince and ask him to find Marion. The advisor's stern gaze appears before my eyes, and it becomes clear that no one will agree to such a step. A picture emerges in the imagination of how the prince will not forgive the bride's escape, and retribution will follow for betrayal. The heart is squeezed with fear because it seems that the only outcome is death in a foreign country. In desperation, the thought of escape appears. Maybe it's worth trying to hide in the endless desert. The sun's rays glide along the walls of the tent, and the girl looks into the distance, not daring to take the first step. A quiet voice sounds inside. This is impossible, and a shadow of fatigue and loneliness appears on the face. Against the backdrop of golden sands, a girl in a blue dress walks through the desert and hears someone calling her princess. She stops and turns to the voice that respectfully calls her Your Highness. At that moment, it dawns on her that she must now play the role of a princess, and a slight smile appears on her face. The bright sun blinds her eyes, and the girl covers her forehead with her hand, trying to see who is in front of her. A man in a white robe approaches her and asks if he can call her princess. Their eyes meet, and he again addresses her with respect, and she shyly replies that any form of address will do. The man notices that her voice is trembling and asks with concern if everything is okay with her. The girl lowers her head and feels anxiety rising in her chest, but at that moment she truly becomes part of a new destiny. Among the green leaves and white flowers, a man in a white robe notices that the girl looks very pale and asks if she is feeling unwell. She looks up and thinks that the Prince of the South does not at all resemble the hot-tempered barbarian that he was described in rumors. An inner voice tells her that if Marion had known about his gentleness, she might not have decided to escape. The man with a warm smile asks you not to worry and promises to do everything to make the trip as comfortable as possible. The girl replies that everything is fine with her, but in her heart she doesn't know how to properly address him. He softly calls her Your Highness, but immediately admits that he would prefer it if she called him by his name. She sheepishly asks if this would be a breach of etiquette, but the man assures that there are no formalities between husband and wife. He says with a smile that he would like to address his wife freely and asks for permission to do so. The man says with a gentle smile that over time they will get used to each other and everything will become easier. He apologizes for his sudden departure and admits that he wanted to personally accompany his companion on the road. She asks her not to hide her fatigue and says that she doesn't need to put pressure on herself if she feels bad. She should say it directly. The girl thinks that he is too kind because he doesn't even suspect that next to him is not his real wife, but an imposter. Fear appears inside that if the truth is revealed, this kind smile will disappear and retribution will follow for the deception. She replies that she is just a little tired because of the changes and tries to remain calm despite her anxiety. The man reports that the preparations are complete and they can set off when she is ready. He adjusts his scarf and explains that in the desert, one should not expose one's skin, especially those who are not accustomed to the hot sun. A man carefully adjusts the veil on Lilybush's head, and their gazes meet among tropical flowers and soft light. He explains that this scarf protects from the sun, and his hand leaves a light musky scent on the fabric. The guest notices that the veil is a little too big for the girl, but promises to bring her beautiful fabrics when they reach his lands. Lily shyly adjusts her scarf and her cheeks flush, feeling insecure in her new outfit. The man leans closer and says with a smile that if you don't hide the freckles on your face and shoulders, they will become even more noticeable. He admits that he finds these freckles charming and looks at her with genuine warmth. Lily's eyes widen in confusion, not understanding when he managed to notice such a detail. She frowns in embarrassment and thinks that this man is too attentive, and her heart starts to beat faster. Lily Bush wonders in surprise if this man was watching her so closely and why his words touched her heart so much. She notices that he seems gentle, but there is something alarming and unpredictable in his gaze. The girl understands that she must be careful not to reveal her secret and not give herself away to him. She feels his hand touch her shoulder, and a slight tension and fear of being exposed appears inside. The man looks into the distance among the golden flowers, and his face becomes serious as if he is hiding his true thoughts. He explains that exposing skin in the desert is dangerous, especially for those not accustomed to the scorching sun. His eyes reflect tenderness and care, and for the first time Lily notices how attentive he is to her. She remembers the past and understands that this person can become not only a test for her, but also support on a new path. In the dim light of night, a man's golden gaze is directed straight at Lily Bush, and this gaze seems too intense to her. She lowers her hands to her waist and feels her heart begin to beat faster from excitement and anxiety. The man notices that the real bride is very different from the portrait, and his words make Lily embarrassed. She smiles awkwardly and tries to hide her confusion, but he immediately asks if everything is okay with her. The man says that no painting can convey her beauty and asks her to ignore his compliments. Lily is surprised by his words and thinks that he simply wanted to emphasize her unusualness and did not intend to evaluate her. The man apologizes if he offended her, and Lily is mentally amazed at his ability to say such sweet phrases. At this moment, a servant approaches them and asks to spare a minute for an important conversation in the open air of the city. Lily Bush covers her mouth with her hands and looks at the man in white with fear when he asks if something is wrong. She remembers that just a few hours ago they were strangers, but now after the ceremony they have become husband and wife. The girl walks next to her new husband along the sun-drenched path and wonders how he can behave so naturally. Anxiety appears inside, because it seems that this person has hidden motives and she cannot trust him. Lily wonders if she is the only one who has suspicions, since she really does have something to hide. The man looks at her with a soft smile, while white roses bloom around and the sky seems endlessly blue. She hides her face in a veil and feels her heart beating faster and faster from excitement and uncertainty. Caesar apologizes and promises to return soon, and Lily is left alone under the shade of the palm trees in the golden sun of the desert. Sunlight plays outside the castle windows, and the towers rise into the sky as if guarding the peace of the palace. In the courtyard, girls are washing clothes, and one of them says that men in Aslan keep harems and gather women around them. Lily Bush asks in surprise what a harem is and listens as they explain to her that it is a house for all of a man's mistresses. A luxurious hall appears in the imagination where noble people can have 2 or 3 wives and many concubines. The servants whisper that in Irul having a mistress is a disgrace, but in Aslan it is a common thing and all the women live together. The girl with a basket in her hands watches their conversation and feels anxiety and misunderstanding growing in her soul. She thinks that if the rumors are true, Prince Caesar probably has a harem and a completely different life awaits her. In a dimly lit room, Lily Bush watches Prince Caesar surrounded by women and wonders if he can make the princess his concubine. The thought comes to mind that if he has many wives, this could become her salvation and a chance for freedom. She hopes that if she doesn't receive much attention, she will be able to disappear unnoticed, and no one will notice her disappearance. She imagines a night escape under the stars and believes that one day she will find a way to escape from the palace. Lily is even ready to pretend to be sick or dead in order to remain unrecognized and disappear forever. A light of hope appears in her soul and she clenches her fist, deciding not to give up no matter what. In the bright desert sun, Lily looks anxiously into the distance and waits for the prince to return so she can figure out what to do next. She closes her eyes from the light and thinks that he promised to return soon, but time drags on endlessly. Lily Bush stands in the shadow of the wall and watches as the servants rush about their business, oblivious to her presence. She gets bored under the hot sun and decides to look around to at least get some relief. The girl walks slowly across the courtyard and notices that no one pays attention to her, even when she passes by the guards. Lily is surprised how easy it is to get lost among busy people and thinks that with such security, escaping won't be difficult. She wrinkles her nose angrily and remembers how Princess Marian managed to slip out of the palace without much effort. At this moment, her attention is drawn to the horse and she comes closer to examine the animal more closely. There is a guy in a green cloak standing next to the horse, and Lily recognizes him as her old friend Jeffrey. The guy looks at her in surprise and quietly says her name, and the feeling of an unexpected meeting hangs in the air. He immediately recognizes Lily Bush despite her veil, and surprise is reflected on his face. She looks at her friend with embarrassment and feels excitement rising in her chest from the unexpected meeting. Jeffrey is silent for a few seconds and his eyes look worried as if he doesn't believe his feelings. Lily suddenly felt tears welling up in her eyes, although she didn't think she missed him so much. The memory of the royal palace where Jeffrey became her first real friend after moving in comes to mind. She remembers how the boy with a serious face cleaned the heavy armor and was always ready to help. Lily smiles and says that he is very similar to her younger brother, and this brings them even closer together. At this moment, a warm and sincere connection arises between them that fills the heart with hope and light. Lily Bush remembers how Jeffrey was almost like a little brother to her and always smiled genuinely at her. 3 years ago, when the war with Aslan began, Jeffrey unexpectedly proposed to her to become his wife. She did not immediately understand the meaning of his words and looked at her friend in confusion, not knowing what to answer. Lily asks if he really wants to volunteer for the war, since only married men are accepted there. Jeffrey sheepishly replies that that is not the case and admits that he chose her because he loves her with all his heart. The girl lowers her gaze and quietly asks him for forgiveness, not finding the strength to reciprocate. From that moment on, an invisible wall grows between them and their friendship becomes different. Lily looks at Jeffrey through tears and cannot find the words to explain her feelings. Jeffrey bows his head sadly and formally asks for forgiveness, calling Lily Bush Your Highness. She is confused and thinks that his coldness is probably connected with her new clothes and her role as a princess. Lily watches her friend care for the horse and realizes that he will be the one who truly mourns its disappearance. The girl lowers her gaze and feels an invisible wall growing between them that cannot be broken down by words. At that moment, Lily suddenly feels like their chance meeting in the desert is a sign of fate and hope for change. Prince Caesar walks down a sunlit street, his golden eyes carefully scanning the courtyard, and he notices something unusual ahead. He stops and turns towards the sound, his gaze filled with anxiety and anticipation of change. The next moment, the prince's face lights up with surprise. He feels that something important for everyone is about to happen. Lily Bush asks Jeffrey to prepare the horse and side saddle because she is not as confident in the saddle as Marion. Jeffrey helps Lily, and together they approach the horses, their figures appearing particularly fragile and vulnerable against the deserted landscape. At this moment, someone decides that Jeffrey should go with Lily instead of the prince, and a new thread of fate arises between the heroes. Lily Bush stands next to Jeffrey and the horses, her gaze wary, hiding her anxiety behind a calm posture. Jeffrey, surprised, asks Lily what these clothes are and immediately reports that Mrs. Marion ran away with Willard Buchanan. The girl is shocked by the news and cannot believe that all this is actually happening. Her heart is squeezed with excitement. Jeffrey guesses that the morning search order is related to the escape and asks if Lily has taken Marion's place. He is outraged and does not understand who could have come up with such a crazy plan. His voice is full of anxiety and anger. Lily calmly replies that now is not the time for arguments, since the search party believes that she is the one who escaped and is in danger. Jeffrey grips the reins and promises to help Her Highness despite all the risks and fears. Lily asks that if he returns to Arula to visit her family and just make sure that everything is okay with them, this is her last request. Lily Bush jerks back as the horse shakes its head in fear, and Jeffrey tries to calm it down. The girl notices how the servants turn around at the noise and looks with alarm at their surprised faces. Jeffrey quietly admits that after this mission, he wanted to propose to Lily again, and his voice trembles with excitement. She is shocked by his words, but he firmly says that he will not allow her to think about death and will always come to her aid. Lily hears her friend asking her to just stay alive, and at that moment someone else approaches them. Against a background of white flowers, Prince Caesar appears, holding the reins of a black horse, his gaze full of determination. Lily is surprised that the prince is nearby and cannot understand why he came now. Caesar confidently approaches Lily and Jeffrey, and their meeting under the scorching sun becomes the beginning of a new chapter in their story. But he reminds Lily Bush with a serious expression that he asked her to stay put until he returned. His golden eyes soften, and he says that from now on she cannot walk alone in the palace or camp. Lily answers with embarrassment and uncertainty, not knowing how to explain her behavior in front of the prince. Caesar comes closer and looks closely at Jeffrey, trying to figure out who this young knight is next to Lily. Jeffrey introduces himself as a junior knight of Arula Castle and senses the tension in the air. The prince asks if he was the one who prepared the saddle for the princess and notices that the horse looks agitated. Jeffrey guiltily admits that he tightened his belts too tightly and apologizes for his mistake. Lily watches their conversation and feels an invisible rivalry arise between the two men. Jeffrey, with a cold face, says that he doesn't trust himself and is going to prepare another horse for Lily Bush. Prince Caesar calmly orders the return of the horse that Jeffrey has already brought, and his voice sounds adamant. Lily watches their conversation silently and feels how the tension between the men becomes almost tangible. Jeffrey lowers his head and reluctantly agrees to the order, his figure seeming especially lonely against the light. Lily looks at her friend with concern and does not understand why he apologized so much and did not let her say a word. Stubbornness and resentment appear in Jeffrey's eyes. He holds back his emotions so as not to show his weakness. It's as if an invisible wall has grown between Lily and Jeffrey, and now she stands next to the prince, while her friend remains on the sidelines. The girl looks into the distance and understands that their paths diverge, and that the unknown and new challenges await her ahead. Prince Caesar, with golden eyes, asks Lily Bush in surprise about the side saddle, and she, embarrassed, hides her face in her hood. The girl awkwardly explains that she chose this saddle because of her clothes, and the prince calmly agrees with her decision. He offers to accompany her personally, but Lily abruptly refuses and her cheeks flush. The prince looks at her carefully and gives the order to prepare a horse for the princess. The servant immediately nods in response. There is an awkward pause between them, and Lily feels insecure around this man. The prince asks if Jeffrey is her personal knight, as they seem very close. Lily hesitates and doesn't know what to say, but the prince calls her by name and waits for confirmation. The girl looks at Caesar in confusion and understands that now she will have to be more careful than ever. Lily Bush is frightened that her secret has been revealed too quickly and cannot hide the worry in her eyes. Prince Caesar calmly explains that he simply heard her friend call her by name and does not see anything strange in it. The girl rushes to justify herself and says that this is just a childhood nickname that has stayed with her since her youth. She asks not to worry about it and is mentally surprised at how easily the prince accepted her explanation. Caesar notices that there is still a special closeness between her and Jeffrey, and his voice becomes softer. He admits that there are no knights in Aslan, and it is difficult for him to understand their customs, but he heard that the knights of Irula are very devoted to their ladies. The prince asks if Jeffrey is her lover, and Lily vehemently denies it, crossing her arms. A determination appears in her eyes, and she looks forward firmly, realizing that she must defend her honor from the prince's attacks. Caesar stands in silence, his golden eyes looking thoughtfully into the distance, and there is a slight tension in the air. He says softly that he doesn't blame Lily Bush for anything, and his voice sounds sincere and calm. The prince admits that he was simply surprised at how easily the knight could communicate with her, and this attracted his attention. Lily looks down in embarrassment and thinks that she reacted too sharply to his questions. Caesar thinks about her nickname, and Lily feels like she looks even more suspicious now. The prince asks with a smile if he can also call her by her childhood nickname, and Lily is at a loss as to what to answer. The girl mentally repeats his question and cannot believe that he wants to be closer to her than others. At this moment, the stern gaze of the advisor appears in the shadows around the corner, and the atmosphere becomes more uneasy. Caesar asks Lily Bush with a warm smile if he can call her by her childhood nickname, and his voice sounds especially soft. The girl is lost in her thoughts because any answer seems dangerous, and she doesn't know what to do. Lily hesitantly agrees and feels a new thread of trust and embarrassment emerge between them. The prince says that they both need time to get used to each other and calls her Lily for the first time. The girl walks next to him and thinks that despite all the changes, her real name is returning to her. The cortege moves slowly along the golden sands of the desert, and the sun's rays play on the fabrics and faces of the riders. Lily looks forward to the suffering of what awaits her in the future. Looking at the endless desert, the question of what awaits her next under this sky sounds in her thoughts. She quickly realizes that the road is turning out to be much more difficult than she imagined, and fatigue is reflected on her face. The girl is riding a horse and feels insecure next to the strong and calm horse. Prince Caesar confidently leads his horse. His movements are light and familiar. He seems to merge with the road. Lily notices how the prince holds a compass in his hand and understands that he is used to relying only on himself on the road. She watches him and thinks that he looks busy and completely focused on the road. The prince explains that in the desert the path changes with every wind, and the role of the guide becomes the most important for everyone. Lily feels how the sun and sand make her stronger, and for the first time in a long time, a timid belief in her own strength appears. In a tight guise, Caesar with golden eyes explains that, according to legend, such people can see the secret paths of the desert. He admits that he doesn't blindly believe in fairy tales, but he has a keen intuition, and Lily Bush can trust him. The girl with a slight smile replies that she believes him, and feels how trust is growing between them. Lily notices that despite his royal upbringing, the prince behaves confidently, as if he is accustomed to harsh roads. She compares herself to him and feels awkward and inexperienced compared to his calmness. Caesar says that they have almost reached today's point, and tomorrow a palanquin will be prepared for her to make the journey easier. Lily anxiously asks if they will have to make the same long journey again tomorrow, and hears that the prince's lands are still far ahead. She thinks she would like to escape at the first opportunity, but with each passing day, it seems more and more impossible. A bleached skull lies on the hot desert sand, and Lily Bush thinks with alarm about how dangerous this path is for outsiders. In the distance, Aslan's camp stretches out, where white tents shine in the rays of the sunset, and the air is filled with heat and dust. Prince Caesar helps Lily get off her horse. His hand holds her tightly and there is concern in his voice. He asks her to be patient until she reaches Elkimar's domain. The girl steps uncertainly on the ground and her dress touches the sand. She almost stumbles and screams in surprise. The prince catches her and hugs her tightly, his golden eyes full of excitement, and Lily freezes in his arms. She feels her cheeks flush and cannot take her eyes off the prince's face. Her heart beats faster and faster. Caesar points to the tent with a slight smile and says that rest awaits them ahead. His voice sounds soft and confident. Lily walks beside him and for the first time in a long time feels safe despite the foreign country and the dangers of the desert. The man carefully holds the tent flap, his hand strong and calm in the rays of the sunset. Lily Bush enters the spacious chambers filled with light and flowers. Her heart skips a beat with excitement. She notices that she is left without her ladies-in-waiting, and for the first time feels truly lonely in a foreign country. The prince admits with a smile that he himself did not expect such a rush and did not take a single assistant because he was getting married for the first time. Lily smiles shyly and doesn't know how to react to his frankness. Her thoughts are confused from fatigue. An image of Marion pops into my head, who would have already caused a scandal due to the absence of servants. The girl mentally repeats that now she is Marion and must behave with dignity despite her fear. She quietly reproaches the prince for his inattention, and in her voice there is a timid attempt to feel more confident. Caesar admits with a guilty smile that he forgot about the ladies-in-waiting and offers Lily Bush his help. Lily shyly refuses and says that she cannot allow him to do such things. She asks with an awkward smile if it will be difficult to wash in the desert and hopes for an answer. The prince brings a basin of warm water and a towel. Everything looks neat and clean. Lily is surprised at how quickly her request was fulfilled, and the prince says that he will watch from a distance. She looks at him embarrassedly, but he goes behind the screen, leaving her alone. Lily happily thinks that she will finally be able to wash herself, and a happy smile appears on her face. She feels rested, and for the first time in a long time there is a feeling of lightness and gratitude. Lily Bush hurries to finish her ablutions so as not to delay anyone and not arouse suspicion. She takes off her coat and sighs with relief, feeling how the fatigue disappears along with the road dust. The girl carefully holds the fabric in her hands and looks at the light that penetrates through the leaves and fills the room. Prince Caesar comes closer and gently touches her shoulder, his gesture full of care and support. His golden eyes reflect tenderness and Lily freezes, not knowing what to say at that moment. She feels how his embrace becomes unexpectedly familiar and warm for her. Lily closes her eyes and inhales the lingering scent of desert sand and the faint scent of Caesar. A quiet feeling of gratitude is born in her soul, and for the first time in a long time she feels safe. The heroine walks barefoot across the carpet, her light nightgown touching the floor, and silence reigns in the room. She sits down at the sink and leans her head tiredly on her hand, enjoying the coolness of the water after a long day. Behind the screen, in the semi-darkness, stands Prince Caesar, his silhouette standing out against the starry sky. Lily looks away thoughtfully and slowly combs her long hair, her movements calm and smooth. She lowers her head and a drop of water appears on her cheek like a tear in the silence of the night. The girl smiles and thinks how amazing it is that she was able to wash herself in the middle of the desert and feels renewed. She looks around the luxurious tent and is amazed by its richness and comfort among the sands. Lily's mind flashes with the story of Aslan's flourishing sea trade and how generously they live here. The heroine sits in the darkness and thinks that she has found herself in a completely different world where everything seems alien and unfamiliar. Her thoughts are full of anxiety. She is afraid of what will happen next and what will happen if her secret is revealed. She worries about her family and about Marion, who is being pursued by knights and does not know if she will ever find a way out. Lily is afraid that she will have to pretend to be someone else her whole life and never become herself. She remembers that a sea voyage awaits them and that escaping is becoming more and more difficult with each passing day. The girl hugs her knees and hides her face in her elbows. Her loneliness becomes especially acute in the silence of the night. At this moment, Prince Caesar carefully pulls back the tent flap and calls Lily by name, his voice soft and caring. Lily looks up to see the prince's golden eyes filling the room with light and hope. Suddenly she freezes in fear. Her cheeks are burning and her eyes reflect surprise and confusion. She wonders if anyone heard her crying and tries to hide her emotions under a mask of calm. Prince Caesar comes up and carefully throws a light scarf over her shoulders, his gesture full of attention and warmth. An exquisite dinner appears on the table. Fruits and bread sparkle in the rays of the sunset. Everything looks festive and bright. Lily is surprised by the amount of food and says that it is too much for one person. The prince explains with a smile that this is a dinner for two, because now they will not only spend the night but also dine together. The girl exclaims in confusion that she didn't expect this, and her voice trembles from surprise. Caesar softly says that this tent is theirs to share and, although temporary, it is their newlyweds' room. Lily Bush, shocked, asks out loud what the prince just said, her face expressing fear and confusion. Caesar replies with a smile that he thought she already knew that they were going to spend the night together. For Lily, this becomes real news. The girl, in despair, explains that all of this is completely unexpected for her, and she is not ready for such a turn of events. She says that she is not in a palace, but in a desert without maids of honor, and did not even have time to wash properly, and is not mentally prepared. The prince is silent and looks at her, his golden eyes full of understanding. He remembers that there was not even an official ceremony. Lily clutches the edge of her cloak and looks at Caesar tensely, her gaze filled with worry and uncertainty. She tries to say something, but her voice trembles and the words get stuck in her throat. The night seems especially long. Caesar gently hugs Lily and suggests that they have dinner first to calm down a little and come to their senses. He invites Lily Bush to the table with a smile and says that the taste of the food should not be too bad. The girl replies that the food is simple because they are on the road and promises that in his domain he will treat her to luxurious dishes. Lily thinks that food is not so important now because she is worried about something completely different, and a shadow of anxiety appears on her face. The prince offers to drink some alcohol with dinner and holds out a jug of drink, his gaze open and friendly. Lily gets scared and suspects that he wants to get her drunk to take advantage of the situation, and anxiety appears in her eyes. Caesar says with a slight smile that if she doesn't tolerate alcohol well, she can just take a sip. The girl shyly agrees and her face becomes softer. She decides to try so as not to offend the prince. Lily carefully takes the glass and looks at Caesar. A slight excitement and interest in this evening appears in her soul. A man washes his hands in clear water, his movements calm and confident. There is bread and nut pie on the table. Lily Bush watches him in surprise and thinks that everything here seems unusual and new to her. They sit down at the table and the prince explains that the main thing in nomadic life is mobility and simplicity. He explains that desert dishes are prepared in such a way that they are easy to eat with your hands and breaks the bread into pieces. Lily takes the piece of bread from his hands with slight embarrassment and feels the warmth of his gaze. They exchange short phrases and trust develops between them, despite the differences in customs. The prince says with a smile that such a large tent is not usually taken on a trip, but an exception was made for newlyweds. He admits that the servants are happy about his marriage, and Lily, for the first time, feels like part of a new family and a different life. The heroine notices that the age difference with Prince Caesar is greater than she expected, and this surprises her. She recalls that royals often have marriages arranged for political reasons even before they reach adulthood. Lily is amazed that despite his age, the prince still hasn't taken a wife and finds this surprising. A jug of white drink appears on the table, and Caesar pours it into a golden cup for Lily. The girl accepts the cup with surprise and looks at the prince, waiting for an explanation of this custom. Caesar, with a warm smile, explains that in Aslan, newlyweds drink alcohol made from camel milk on their wedding night. Lily doesn't know how to refuse, but she doesn't want to offend the prince and hesitantly takes a sip from the cup. The taste of the drink seems unusual to her, and she understands that this evening will remain in her memory forever. With a blush on her cheeks, she raises the cup and feels her heart begin to beat faster. She takes a sip and passes the cup to Prince Caesar, his golden eyes looking at her with warmth and attention. The prince drinks from the same cup, and Lily notices how his lips touch the edge, and excitement appears in her soul. At this moment, a special closeness arises between them, and everything around is filled with light and colors. Their lips meet in a tender kiss, and Lily freezes in the prince's arms, forgetting about everything in the world. She steps away, embarrassed, and cannot believe that all this is happening to her in reality. The prince explains that this ritual symbolizes the unity of their destinies, just as wine is mixed in one cup. He promises that he will not do anything to make her drunk and wants to first earn her trust. Lily looks at the outstretched hand in surprise and feels hope for the first time. The man says that to prove their marriage, they will have to share one bed. His voice sounds calm and confident. Lily Bush anxiously asks if he will be able to maintain control if they are close, and hears that her trust is most important to him. The prince extends his hand and asks if she believes him to take his hand and follow him into a new life. Lily feels alone in a foreign country, as if she is walking in pitch darkness, not knowing what lies ahead. At this moment, the prince's words about protection seem like a sweet temptation to her, and she looks at his open palm. She understands that now, most of all, she needs a shield that she can trust, and is looking within herself for the strength to make a choice. Lily can't let go of the lifeline extended to her, and decides to trust this man despite her fear. She lowers her head and slowly takes a step towards the prince, allowing hope to enter her heart. Caesar looks at Lily Bush with a soft smile, his golden eyes full of hope and calm. Inside Lily, the thought sounds that their relationship began with a lie, and this is a heavy burden on her heart. The prince extends his hand and asks if she would like to trust him and take a step towards a new life. Lily lowers her gaze and hesitates for a long time, but a timid hope for change is born in her soul. She slowly reaches for his hand, and their fingers touch in a tender and trembling gesture. A warm light appears in Caesar's eyes. He smiles reservedly and takes a step forward. Lily feels her heart start to beat faster, and for the first time in a long time, she feels not alone. The man carefully embraces Lily, and she allows herself to relax in his arms, trusting this new feeling. He holds Lily Bush close to him and thanks her for her trust, his voice sounding sincere and warm. Lily freezes in his arms, her eyes wide with surprise and her heart filled with excitement. The prince easily lifts Lily into his arms, and she cannot hold back a surprised cry, not believing that all this is happening for real. His steps sound confidently on the floor of the tent, and Lily thinks that it looks like a joke, but a timid joy appears in her soul. Caesar picks her up and carries her to the bed. Lily, not understanding what is happening, hopes that this is a joke. Lily Bush lies alert, listening to every sound, her eyes wide in the darkness of the tent. She notices Prince Caesar taking off his shirt, his silhouette appearing particularly impressive in the semi-darkness. The girl instantly wraps herself in a blanket and tries to hide away from his gaze, her heart beating faster and faster. A thought pops into her head that maybe she should just run away, but fear of the guards hinders her movements. Lily understands that if she goes outside the tent, the prince's men will break inside and everything will only get worse. She stealthily watches Caesar's back, his muscular figure standing out against the white flowers and soft light. The girl is haunted by bad thoughts, so for her own safety, she hides under the blanket. Lily is unable to relax due to extreme tension. Caesar touches her body sharply, causing the heroine to shudder. She turns around sharply and sees Prince Caesar next to her, her voice trembling as she says that she is not yet ready to fully trust him. The prince gently asks her to be silent and explains that they could be overheard, and asks her to be patient a little longer for the sake of appearances. Lily looks at him in surprise, and he watches her reaction closely, his golden eyes full of determination. The prince gets out of bed and sits on the edge, his silhouette standing out in the soft light of the room. Lily watches him from under the blanket. He approaches the candle and blows out the flame with one movement, making the room darker and quieter. In the silence of the night, Lily finds herself in his arms, her long hair scattered across the pillow and her heart beating faster and faster. She asks what's going on and hears in response that there are too many curious glances directed at them and they need to be careful. The heroine lies in the arms of Prince Caesar and listens with anxiety to his words about how they will have to play out their first wedding night convincingly. Lily is surprised that they are actually being watched and feels the tension in the room become almost palpable. The prince says with a smile that everyone is interested in why he was alone until such an age, and Lily finds herself curious too. She looks into his golden eyes and asks him to tell her the truth about his past and the reasons for his loneliness. Caesar begins to explain that in Aslan, the succession of power is a bloody struggle and only the strongest survive. He says that his father has 32 children, and 19 of them are princes who have to learn to survive from childhood. Lily listens in horror as out of 19 princes, only 8 survive to adulthood and only 3 receive their lands. But he understands that behind the prince's external strength and calm lies a difficult past and a struggle for life. Caesar tells Lily that of the 3 heirs, only one is his sister and not a prince, and his low voice reassures her. Lily is surprised to think that women can also inherit the throne and asks about the rules of succession. She learns that 50 years have passed since a woman sat on the throne, and now this is a rarity for Aslan. The prince explains that all heirs live under constant surveillance and cannot feel safe. He admits that he never wanted to fight for the throne, but a healthy prince always remains a threat to the heir. Therefore, Caesar could not afford to start a family, and Lily understands why he did not have a wife. The girl, confused, asks why he married her then, and the prince admits that he should not have been her husband. He explains that his father announced that whoever arrives first and conducts the wedding will receive the right to take the princess as his wife. The heroine clutches the sheet and thinks in anger that the Prime Minister of Italy also knew about the political intrigue. Her face is distorted with indignation. She stands in her nightgown and looks anxiously at Prince Caesar's hand extended to her, not knowing what to expect next. The prince gently pulls Lily back into bed and she allows him to cover her with the blanket, her face dissatisfied. Lily hears him explain that his father promised the princess's hand to whoever was the first to hold the wedding, and now she is his wife. The girl clutches the hem of her dress and understands that this marriage gives the prince control over the sea routes and fertile lands of the south. Caesar says that other princes will fight for her, and the only one who will not become a rival is his sister Salome. Lily is horrified to think that sacred marriage has been turned into a political struggle and calls it barbarism. She looks at the prince and asks if he didn't want the throne, why did he choose her and make her his wife? The man lies on the bed and looks at Lily, his golden eyes glowing with a soft smile and calm. Lily turns away shyly, her cheeks flush and her heart beats loudly with excitement and new feelings. She recalls that there are 3 factions in the kingdom claiming the throne, and the party of Princess Salome is considered the strongest. Caesar explains that he supports an heir named Passard, and it was he who was supposed to marry Lily. Against the backdrop of golden sands, the prince explains that he was the closest to her and therefore married her instead of his brother. Lily thinks that this marriage is beneficial for Passard and understands that the prince's kindness was part of a political game. Caesar admits that the reason for their shared bed is not passion, but the need to maintain appearances for others. He says that from the moment of their wedding, all their actions were under surveillance, and now they have to play their roles to the end. Even though they are in the newlyweds' tent, they cannot achieve privacy, since at this moment many eyes are directed at them. The prince explains that their every move is being watched, and that if he lets his guard down, enemies will try to kidnap her. He says that the safest place for Lily now is next to him, and she agrees with trepidation. The girl wonders why they are so close and for the first time feels the warmth of someone else's body so clearly. Lily asks if he hates her and hears in response that this is not so. She simply does not hope for anything anymore. She thanks fate that the prince is polite and does not take advantage of his advantage, but she feels vulnerable. Caesar tenderly says that even if she says no, he is not going to let her go. At this moment, Lily allows herself to believe for the first time that she can be safe next to this man. She lies in the darkness and hears Caesar quietly admit that he liked her. Her heart stops in surprise. Lily anxiously asks if he really won't do anything, and the prince, smiling, promises that he won't cross the line if she doesn't want him to. The next second he laughs and hugs Lily, saying that it was just a joke and that she shouldn't be afraid of his intentions. The prince swears on his honor that he will not make the first move and will keep his promise if she does not take the initiative. Lily shyly asks for permission to make a proposal, and the prince asks with interest what she means. She explains that she wants their wedding night to be peaceful, and for him to simply help her fall asleep. The prince agrees and says that he will be happy to help her feel safe and sleep peacefully next to him. Outside the window, the night camp is plunged into silence, and Lily feels lightness and peace for the first time in a long time. The night silence of the camp is filled with starlight, and light voices fill the air with anticipation and anxiety. Caesar leans towards Lily with a warm smile, his golden eyes shining in the semi-darkness of the tent. The heroine freezes with excitement. Her cheeks are burning and her breathing becomes intermittent. She cannot hide her embarrassment. Her hand clutches the sheet, and at that moment she feels tension and timidity filling her heart. She exclaims, "Your Highness," her voice trembling with surprise and confusion. The prince gives Lily a massage with a slight smile, his movements confident and caring. He tries to relieve her tension. The girl explains that in Irul it is not customary to address the prince by name and asks him to be careful with her feelings. Caesar promises to be more gentle and says that Aslan has no strict rules while they are together, and Lily allows herself to relax and trust him for the first time. And also, with a smile, Lily says that she can call him whatever she wants, even an idiot, if it's easier for her. His golden eyes shine with kindness. The girl looks at the prince in surprise and cannot believe that he treats her so lightly and asks to be called by his name. She turns away in embarrassment but hears him softly repeat Lily, and there is tenderness in his voice. The heroine lies on the bed and feels the prince's strong hands giving her a massage. He asks her to call him by name, and with difficulty she decides and whispers Caesar, her voice trembling with excitement and embarrassment. The prince smiles and says that he doesn't hear her, asks her to repeat it louder, and encourages her with his tone. Lily cries out his name in despair, and the prince happily says that from now on she should call him only that way. He lies down next to her and whispers that she did well. Lily freezes in surprise and for the first time feels closer to him. The girl shudders when Prince Caesar's strong hands begin to massage her back and legs, and she is surprised by his skill. She asks where he got such skills, and hears that it is a point pressure technique that is taught to all desert warriors. The prince explains that after training or a fight, you need to relax your muscles to avoid problems the next day. He notices that her back and hips are very tense and gently kneads them with his strong palms. Lily complains that it hurts, but immediately admits that in some places the sensations are very pleasant and relaxing. The prince carefully watches her reaction and massages her more carefully so as not to cause unnecessary pain. He says that this is enough, and Lily sits up on the bed with relief, her face glowing with gratitude. The prince says with a smile that he is happy to help, because giving his wife a massage is his special privilege. In the dim light of the tent, Lily Bush's blue eyes reflect anxiety and a multitude of unspoken questions. Inside, she hears a reproach for why she is so excited, but nearby she hears the calm voice of Prince Caesar, assuring her that their performance will be enough to deceive the spies. His smile and light irony lighten the atmosphere. He notes that her reaction was very convincing, and now he can relax a little. Embarrassment colors the girl's cheeks. She asks to stop teasing her, but a slight relief appears in her soul. The warm evening brings them even closer together. They sit next to each other and trust, and a feeling of security arise between them. The prince gently reminds that there is a long journey ahead and advises to get a good rest to gain strength for the new day. In his arms, fears and worries disappear for the first time in a long time. Lily feels safe and is warmed by this feeling. In the silence of the night, she decides to ask why he is so frank and catches herself thinking that she is beginning to believe in his sincerity. A warm hand rests on your hair, and in the silence of the night you hear the question, did it all really start with someone simply taking your hand? Doubt arises inside. Is this really enough to trust another person and allow yourself to be close? Moonlight glides across faces and the question hangs in the air, can one reason be the only one, and is that not enough to begin with? The look of golden eyes becomes especially soft when Lily's name is heard, and at that moment everything around freezes. My heart tells me that they met only recently and still know so little about each other, but a lot has already changed. In the embrace of the night, there is a feeling that there are still many discoveries ahead, and trust will grow with each day. The courage to take the first step becomes the main bridge between two destinies, and now every gesture is filled with meaning. There is no need to rush, because time and patience will allow you to truly get to know each other and give you hope for a new life. In the semi-darkness of the tent, a quiet voice of confidence and tenderness sounds. He promises that everything will work out for them and carefully touches Lily Bush's hair. His words become a lullaby for her under the starry sky. Worries dissolve and long-awaited peace comes. In the silence of the night, a promise is heard to do everything possible to no longer see her tears and to make her fears a thing of the past. A light kiss on the forehead becomes a sign of care and support, and the night envelops them in the soft light of the moon. Time seems to stand still and a peaceful night arrives, filled with warm breath and a feeling of security. Outside the window, a new day begins. The caravan moves slowly through the desert, and the road goes into the distance through the sands and stars. The path becomes familiar, and every morning Lily meets her in the arms of the prince, and a timid joy appears in her heart. It's been 2 weeks since they left Irula's camp, and now waking up in his arms feels like the beginning of a new life. The morning light falls softly on Prince Caesar's face. He still keeps his promise and does not cross the boundaries of trust. Lily Bush, lying on the pillow next to him, understands that their closeness is now dictated not only by feelings, but also by the need for safety. Thoughts about whether it is really necessary to be so close haunt her, but she does not dare to distance herself. The girl carefully frees herself from his embrace and touches the cool floor with her bare feet. The thin fabric of the dress slides over Lily's skin. She throws a blue scarf over her shoulders and slowly moves away from the bed. The prince remains half asleep, his hand still reaching out to her, but she is already standing to the side and watching him. At this moment, a slight sadness and gratitude for patience and respect for her boundaries appears in the soul. A new day begins with silence and light, and ahead of them lies another step towards trust and understanding of each other. Lily walked over to the bed to straighten the blanket. Lily Bush, wearing a blue headscarf, stands at the head of the bed and is surprised to notice that he is not moving at all, like a child in deep sleep. Her thoughts take her back to the past, where nights were restless and Marion often woke her up to make sure everything was okay. The dark background gives way to anxiety for relatives, and for those who remained in Irul, a quiet prayer for the safety of family and friends sounds in the soul. The silence of the morning fills the room. Lily sits on the edge of the bed and yawns tiredly, feeling how tired she still is after the long journey. Suddenly, a strong hand reaches out to her and she turns around in surprise, her hair fluttering in the sunbeam. The next moment, she finds herself in the prince's tight embrace, his warmth and strength filling her with unexpected joy and embarrassment. The heart begins to beat faster and a blush appears on Lily's cheeks. The morning begins with soft light and warm embraces in which Lily Bush unexpectedly finds herself waking up next to Prince Caesar. Her heart starts beating faster when she notices how tightly he holds her even in her sleep and does not let go for a moment. A glance slides over his calm face, and a feeling of surprise appears in the soul as to how one can be so strong even in a dream. The girl carefully tries to free herself from his embrace and feels his hand tightly squeezing her palm. Her thoughts are confused between embarrassment and admiration, but finally she manages to get out and she breathes a sigh of relief. A ray of sunshine breaks through the tent canopy and calls for a new day. Lily decides that she can go outside for a while. Bare feet step on the cool floor, and each step is filled with slight anxiety and anticipation. While the prince sleeps, she's going to check what's going on outside, because that's the only way to feel freer, even for a moment. The first attempt to leave the tent is interrupted by an unexpected voice, and Lily Bush freezes on the threshold, feeling trapped. Anxiety spreads inside when Prince Caesar advises not to leave the camp, as danger can lurk around every corner. Even if he manages to escape Absol's killers, thoughts of poisonous snakes and scorpions haunt him. It turns out that the prince had not been sleeping all this time, but had been watching her every movement and woke up at the slightest noise. In response to the apology, he gently says that there is no need to ask for forgiveness, because safety is the most important thing. The morning is filled with light and slight fatigue, and in Lily's soul the question arises, will they always have to share the same bed? His gaze glides over the prince's golden eyes, and he admits that he has been thinking about this a lot in recent days. A new closeness and trust arises between them, and even more trials and frank conversations await ahead. The morning begins with slight embarrassment when a voice from her bed asks if she is getting up too early. A thought flashes inside that the habit of waking up at dawn remains from the time when Lily Bush was a maid. The answer must be chosen carefully, because you can't reveal your secret, and the girl refers to a change of scenery. The room is filled with soft light, bare feet step on the carpet, and a slight uncertainty hangs in the air. The prince says with relief that he is glad if the reason is not his, and his words sound almost playful. He admits that he is gradually getting used to sharing a bed with Lily, but it still seems strange. His gaze glides over her figure and a slight tension filled with anticipation arises between them. Lily asks with a smile why he looks at her like that, and hears in response that for him, this is the first such experience, and every morning next to her is truly new. The morning is filled with a slight awkwardness when the conversation turns to assassination attempts, and both can't help but smile at this strange topic. There is a feeling of exception to the rule in the air, because it is not every day that one has to remember such dangers. The prince's golden eyes look with tenderness and slight irony. His posture is relaxed and his smile is sincere. Embarrassment is building inside Lily Bush. She can't take her eyes off his face and feels her heart start to beat faster. At that moment, his gaze meets hers, and he quietly says that the color of her eyes reminds him of the warm southern seas. Everything inside freezes, and for the first time the girl catches herself thinking how wonderful this man next to her is. Excitement and delight are reflected in her eyes, and a slight blush colors her cheeks when she hears a compliment. The morning light plays in Lily's hair and she involuntarily smiles, realizing that this day began with something new and important for both of them. The morning begins with a light touch when the prince admits that he still does not believe that he has a wife. Lily Bush is embarrassed and doesn't know how to react. Her cheeks are flushed. Suddenly he kisses her on the cheek and says that this is not a bad experience for him at all. The girl is in shock and cannot believe that all this is happening in reality. Her heart beats faster. The prince explains that such a kiss is a common greeting in Aslan and smiles. Lily doesn't believe that such a greeting exists and why it seems so personal. The prince insists that in his country it is as common as a handshake and is used at banquets. The girl is amazed and cannot imagine that such moments can be part of everyday life. After a light breakfast, only empty plates remain on the table and sunlight plays on the glasses. There is a sense of calm in the room, and Lily Bush thanks me with a smile for the delicious food. Prince Caesar asks if she liked it, and there is genuine concern in his voice. In response, the girl nods and catches herself thinking that such moments are becoming more and more valuable to her. The prince's gaze softens, he bows his head and lightly touches her hand in greeting. Lily is surprised by this gesture because for her it seems unusual, but in Aslan it is a common form of politeness. A slight thrill of excitement appears inside when he asks to wait a little and promises to cook the food himself. The girl remains alone in the room and watches as the sunbeam glides across the floor, and a new day and new discoveries await them ahead. Bright sunshine greets the couple at the entrance to the tent as the prince takes Lily Bush by the hand and leads her through the camp. A slight embarrassment appears inside, but the warmth of his palm gives confidence and supports me on this new day. The girl's gaze becomes determined. She tries to keep up and not show her excitement in front of others. The prince's golden eyes glow with approval. He smiles and squeezes her hand tighter as if promising protection. Suddenly, Lily stumbles and mentally scolds herself for her clumsiness. It seems to her that everyone is looking only at her. A blush is hidden under her scarf, and in her soul she wonders why she feels so awkward right now. Irritation is growing inside, because every step is difficult and it seems like the scarf is about to fall off my head. At this moment, a servant looks into the tent with a tray, and Lily tries to pull herself together so as not to reveal her feelings to strangers. Suddenly, a servant with a tray kneels in front of Lily Bush and a surprised pause hangs in the room. His gaze is full of confusion, and on the tray there sparkles an elegant goblet of clear water. The girl is confused and does not immediately understand what is expected of her, but still responds with an uncertain gesture. A thought appears inside that I need to ask for help with the veil, because I can't cope on my own. She sheepishly admits that she tried to wrap the fabric herself, but nothing worked and asks for help. The servant takes up the task with a smile, and in a minute carefully places the veil on her shoulders. Lily is surprised at how easy everything turned out and thinks about how to thank this person for his care. The prince's words about local customs come to mind, and for the first time the girl feels like part of a new world. A small smile appears on Lily Bush's face as she thanks the servant for helping her with her veil and feels a little more confident. A soft light fills the room, and the servant nods respectfully and steps aside, leaving the girl alone with her thoughts. Inside, there's a sense of wonder why, in this country, even simple gratitude can be so embarrassing and personal. Prince Caesar appears in the doorway. His gaze becomes attentive, and a silent question hangs in the air. At this moment, Lily feels for the first time that each new day here brings not only confusion, but also new discoveries about herself. A stern voice is heard in the room, and the servant with his head bowed leaves, leaving Lily Bush and Prince Caesar alone. Anxiety rises inside her when the prince asks why she allowed a strange man to come so close even for a trifle. A slight embarrassment is reflected in Lily's eyes. She explains that she simply couldn't cope with the veil and asked for help. In response, one hears a reproach after all. One cannot be so trusting of strangers and forget about one's own safety. A feeling of awkwardness arises in Lily's soul. She lowers her gaze and understands that in the new world, even a simple request can be perceived as carelessness. The prince looks at her with slight disappointment and reminds her that she shouldn't behave so intimately with strangers. The girl tries to justify herself, but the words get stuck in her throat and she feels especially vulnerable under his gaze. A tense silence fills the room, and Lily realizes for the first time how different their ideas about trust and caution are. Lily Bush justifies herself by saying that she simply wanted to express gratitude as is customary in Aslan, and recalls the words about the kiss. Everything is confused inside. She doesn't understand why her gesture caused such a storm of emotions, and why her heart is beating so loudly. The prince looks at her seriously, and with slight jealousy, his golden eyes follow her every movement. The girl notices for the first time that she usually doesn't react so sharply, but now everything seems especially important. Resentment rises inside her because the person who was always kind suddenly becomes frighteningly strict, and she cannot hold back her tears. The incident with Jeffrey and the saddle comes to mind, and Lily wonders if the prince still remembers that episode. Caesar's voice sounds reproachful. He asks if the servant also helped her get dressed, and the girl is at a loss with embarrassment. She hastens to assure him that she can now manage on her own, and for the first time catches the prince's soft gaze, which seems to forgive her carelessness. Prince Caesar carefully hugs Lily Bush and admits that he was too nervous, asking her to understand his feelings. There is an apology in his voice as he softly says that he is sorry, and asks Lily to be more careful in the future. Their hands intertwine, and the prince warns her that from now on she needs to be more careful about her actions. Silence falls in the room as he admits that he doesn't want to see such scenes anymore, and his words sound especially serious. Lily looks into the prince's eyes with slight excitement and quietly replies that she understands his request. The next minute he smiles and suggests that they hit the road so as not to waste time. The bright sun and the noise of the camp greet them at the exit of the tent, and Lily feels the desert becoming closer to her. Calmness appears inside her, and she notices that she is beginning to get used to the new landscapes and to life next to this person. The prince says, slightly offended, that he taught Lily Bush how to greet others, but did not expect her to try it on another man. There is reproach in his voice. He cannot understand how she could touch her lips to a stranger and not to her husband. Morning meetings become a test for him. He admits that every time Lily looks away, it hurts him. Irritation is growing inside the girl. She thinks that this man is too clingy and does not give her peace. The prince continues to complain that she doesn't look at him at the table and doesn't even appreciate the dishes he prepared especially for her. Lily closes her eyes tiredly. It seems to her that she has already apologized and does not know how to react to his words. Confusion appears in her soul, and she asks what she should do so that he will finally forgive her. Two silhouettes walk along the sand, and something unspoken hangs between them, but in this argument something new and important for both is born. The man, with a mysterious smile, says that Lily Bush should already know the answer to her question, and looks at her with anticipation. Inside the girl, confusion appears. She doesn't understand what he means, and looks at him with a question in her eyes. The next second, he asks her to kiss him too, and at that moment, bright flowers bloom between them. Lily is shocked and can't believe her ears and mentally exclaims what he wants from her right now. There are a lot of people around, and she can't believe that the prince really wants a kiss in front of everyone. The thought flashes through her head that all his complaints were just for this, and she feels a little deceived. The girl decides that since she has to pretend anyway, it's better to do it quickly and end the awkwardness. She reaches out to the prince and kisses him on the lips, and in her soul there appears relief and a slight joy that this moment has finally come. The prince's attentive golden gaze is fixed on Lily Bush. He is surprised and a little confused after her unexpected kiss. The girl lowers her eyes in embarrassment and thinks that placing her hands on the prince's cheeks is beyond the bounds of official etiquette, but she cannot help but smile. The prince says with approval that although this gesture is not official, he really likes it and considers it a sweet expression of affection. Lily blushes when the prince gently takes her face and says that it turned out well. His voice sounds warm and soft. The next moment he kisses her on the cheek and the girl laughs from surprise and tickling. Her laughter fills the air with joy. Lily asks to stop because she is ticklish, but she cannot hide her happiness and lightness at this moment. Their laughter echoes across the desert, and they embrace against the backdrop of a bright sky and white flowers. Everything around is filled with light and the spring breeze. The cortege moves along the golden sands. Lily sits on a camel and feels protected and loved thanks to the care of Prince Caesar. The motorcade moves slowly through the desert under the bright sun, a long shadow stretching ahead. Prince Caesar rides next to Lily Bush and keeps a close eye on the road. Lily sits in a palanquin on a camel and thinks that the road is not so difficult thanks to the prince's care. The girl looks tiredly to the side and feels that her heart is the most tired. Suddenly the palanquin tilts and Lily peers out anxiously. One of the escorts shouts that they are mercenaries and everyone freezes in fear. Lily, frightened, asks what is happening, her face expressing anxiety. The riders race across the sand, raising clouds of dust, and the caravan finds itself in danger. Prince Caesar, on a black horse, rushes forward to protect Lily and everyone else. A mercenary in a white turban takes aim with a bow and fires an arrow towards the caravan. Lily Bush turns around in fear and notices the danger, her eyes widening in shock. An arrow flies in the sky and a horseman with a bow continues his attack on the palanquin with Lily. The arrow hits the sand next to the camel. Lily screams in fear and grabs the handrail. The people in the caravan flee in panic, leaving Lily alone on the camel. The girl looks at the group of riders in confusion and does not understand what is happening. An alarming thought arises inside her. Could she really have become the target of an attack? Caesar turns sharply on his horse, his face expressing alarm and readiness for battle. Lily Bush, in a palanquin, looks around fearfully, sensing impending danger. Prince Caesar rushes forward on his horse and shouts her name, his voice full of alarm. Riders in black cloaks approach the caravan, their shadows falling on the sand. A camel with a palanquin rushes through the desert. Lily holds on with all her might to keep from falling. The thought flashes through the girl's head that carelessness could deprive her of the path to salvation. The prince on a black horse catches up with the palanquin, and Lily doesn't know whether she should move or lie low. Caesar loudly orders the princess's palanquin to be protected, his face expressing determination and anger. Dust and screams fill the air around the caravan as a real battle for Lily's safety begins. He angrily shouts that the attackers are Absala's minions and tightly grips the hilt of his sword. Mercenaries on horses rush across the sand, and the commander orders not to leave anyone alive. Kill everyone. The prince raises his sword high above his head, his face determined and ready for battle. His eyes sparkle with rage and determination. He is ready to protect Lily Bush at any cost. At this moment, blood splashes onto the sand, and Lily, in the palanquin, watches the fight in horror. The prince strikes with his sword and the enemy falls with a scream, blood flying in all directions. The prince's face is covered in blood. He fights without sparing himself, and cries of pain and fear can be heard around him. Lily looks at what is happening in horror. Her eyes are full of shock, and she hears the enemies screaming to kill them all. Caesar stands with a bloody sword, his face and clothes covered in blood, but he remains calm. As he approaches Lily and her palanquin, his gaze is full of determination to protect her despite the danger. Dead enemies lie on the sand. 2 mercenaries with bloody swords stand next to the bodies. One of the mercenaries notices the palanquin and tightly grips the hilt of his sword, preparing to attack. Lily, in the palanquin, closes her eyes and tries to cope with the horror of what she saw. She thinks she never expected to witness people being killed right before her eyes. The girl carefully looks out from the palanquin and sees the enemy approaching her with a weapon. The prince, seeing his wife being attacked, immediately grabs his dagger, wanting to save her. A mercenary with a sword swings at Lily, and she recoils in horror, not knowing what to do. Caesar suddenly snatched the bow from the hands of one of his warriors, and then, concentrating, he pulled the bowstring and took aim. Then he fired. The arrow hit the side of the one who was going to kill Lily, and he fell. Caesar, after the shot, calmly walked up to the man lying on the sand. He had an arrow sticking out of his body, but he was still alive. The prince placed his foot on the wounded assassin and took hold of the hilt of the sword, and then, with burning eyes, he raised the blade above his head. With all his strength, Caesar brought the blade down, so that blood sprayed in all directions. Lily, who saw this, opened her eyes wide in fear. She saw the prince pull the blade out of the body, the entire blade covered in blood. The girl closed her eyes, her trembling hands clutching the cloth thrown over her head. She was very scared. The prince's warriors approached the dead body lying on the sand, and he himself turned around and walked towards the palanquin where the girl was sitting, calling her by name. Approaching the camel, he first calmed the animal. Then he walked up to the stole and placed his hand on Lily's back. Then Caesar took the girl in his arms, who was still sitting in fear with her eyes closed. Feeling herself in a protected ring of arms, Lily opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she couldn't. Holding the girl to his chest, Caesar told her that she no longer needed to be afraid. He asked if she was in pain anywhere, and told her that she was safe now. The man then carried her to his horse and put her on it, and then he jumped onto the horse himself, so that the girl found herself sitting in front of him. Putting his arm around Lily's waist, he confessed that he would no longer leave her alone in the palanquin. The girl didn't answer this, but just looked at the prince with sad eyes. And he turned around and told his people that they had to quickly leave here before the enemies caught up with them. The bright sun illuminated the desert sands across which the horses galloped. And finally, the buildings of houses appeared in the distance. Lily watched in surprise as they approached some kind of settlement. From the top of the hill, she saw the town of Lanyak, neutral territory. When they entered, they met an elderly man who offered to show them the way, and Lily, surprised, asked where they were. Caesar replied that the village was called Lagnac, and added that since it was neutral territory, events like the past should not be repeated here. Opening the door to the house, the prince added that he could not promise her absolute safety, and asked her to promise not to leave the room, since he would be gone for some time, but he would return in half a day. As he left, Caesar ordered his men not to leave their post until his return. As Caesar walked down the street, he suddenly heard someone calling him. It was the girl who bowed and reported that she had studied the question they had discussed. She added that people said that the princess had disappeared that night and several knights were with her. Caesar, leaning against the wall and folding his arms across his chest, asked if there was anything else. To this, the girl replied that the royal artist had confirmed that there was no record of Princess Lily, which surprised him. The man remembered looking at the girl's back, her hair fluttering in the wind. And there was also a moment when I noticed that she looked nothing like her portrait. Caesar also remembered how difficult it was for the girl to ride side saddle, and also how bitterly Lily cried on the first night in the desert, thinking that he couldn't hear. At that moment, he assumed that the princess was not real. Lily, left alone in the house, remembered that when she was left alone in the desert, she realized something. Namely, the face that appeared before my eyes did not belong to one of my relatives. Lily realized that it was the face of Caesar, who was rushing to her aid. The girl thought sadly that if the prince knew the truth, he would come to her aid. At that moment, Caesar opened the door of the house and, saying that he had returned, entered the house. Seeing him, Lily looked at his face and simply said, "Welcome back." His clothes were still covered in blood after the battle, and he did not respond to the girl's words. Suddenly, Lily noticed a small wound on the man's face, and plucking up her courage, she told the prince that he had earlier. The man, touching the wound on his face with his hand, replied that there was nothing serious there. When Lily added that it needed to be treated, Caesar simply waved it off, saying that it couldn't even be called a wound. When he walked away from the girl, she assumed that the prince was irritated by something. The girl watched Caesar looking out the window and realized that she wanted to take care of him, and when the man cast an attentive glance at Lily, she sadly thought that she was only a stunt double for the real princess. And she said out loud that even if it wasn't now, he needed to remember to apply medicine to the wound. Hearing this, Caesar pressed his lips tightly together in irritation, and then, approaching the girl, he added that he didn't want her to worry. When the prince added that she shouldn't worry about his wounds, Lily realized that it was said rather coldly. Then Caesar said that he would go out for a while, and asking her to rest in the room, he left, leaving the girl to look after him in bewilderment. She didn't understand why the man started behaving this way, and Caesar, going outside, tried to contain the anger that had settled inside. He clenched his fists hard to calm himself down. After some time, his gaze became cold and calm, as if he had made some decision. Lily, looking at the closed doors, wondered why the prince was acting so distant and whether something could have set him off. She remembered that even when she asked the servant to tie her veil, Caesar was not so cold. The girl then suggested that he might be angry that she had put everyone in danger. Walking around the room and removing her veil, Lily still did not understand the prince's behavior. The girl became angry and thought that if he was going to push her away like that, then he shouldn't have been kind to her in the first place. Lily suddenly realized that the man had stirred her heart. The girl admitted to herself that she had developed feelings for Caesar. Having folded the veil carefully, Lily decided that it did not change anything. Sitting on the bed, she sadly realized that she was just a substitute for the real princess. Lily knew that if they found out who she really was, it would be the end for her. And also, the girl had previously hoped that Caesar would keep his distance from her. After all, having several wives, there is no reason why he should treat her in a special way. As she laid down the folded veil, she thought sadly that perhaps this was for the best. Sometime later, Lily stretched and wondered how much longer she had to wait here. When the girl decided to smooth her hair, she heard a knock at the door. Looking there, the girl saw an elderly woman who brought her food on a tray. Lily watched in surprise as she placed the tray of food on the table. And then she said that she had a request, which surprised the elderly woman. After listening to the girl's request, the woman brought her the finished medicine. Lily was very happy and, smiling, said that it was simply incredible. Approaching the woman, she thanked her and kissed her on the cheek. The elderly woman, not expecting such a reaction from the stranger, laughed cheerfully. And then she also kissed the girl on the cheek, slightly embarrassing her. Lily, touching the place of the kiss with her hand, suddenly thought that she was becoming a part of Aslan. The sun was quietly setting behind the horizon, painting the sky in bright colors, and Lily hoped that Caesar would return soon. Sometime later, the prince entered the house, apologizing for being late and explaining that the meeting had dragged on. The girl looked at his cold face and compressed lips. And then she said that he didn't need to apologize because he probably had a lot of things to do. Lily walked up to the man and looked into his eyes, which were devoid of warmth. Hiding her hands behind her back, she looked questioningly at his wound. After all, Lily wanted to apply medicine to her, but suddenly she realized something. Namely, that someone else had already taken care of Caesar's wound. So Lily smiled and asked the prince not to worry, because she had not waited that long. She said that she stayed in the room the whole time, and also that they brought her food. Suddenly, Lily saw an unfamiliar girl peeking out from behind Caesar. She turned her head and looked at her carefully. Suddenly, the prince noticed that Lily was holding her hands behind her back and asked what she was hiding there. Frightened by the menacing tone in which Caesar asked, the girl stuttered and answered that nothing special. Angrily, the man added that just a few hours ago she had almost been killed by mercenaries, and now he had to immediately check everything suspicious. Caesar asked to show Lily what she was holding in her hands, and added that perhaps there was a reason why this was impossible. The girl looked at him in surprise, not understanding what he was talking about. After thinking for a bit, Lily realized that there was some sense in the prince's words. Holding the medicine behind her back, the girl thought that it was quite possible that she was on edge after almost losing her life. Lowering her head, Lily pulled her hands out from behind her back and, holding the medicine in her palms, looked at them. Opening her palms, she explained that she had asked the woman who brought her food to bring medicine to treat her wounds. Hearing this, Caesar asked with excitement if she was wounded, to which the girl answered in the negative and added that she wanted to treat his wound. Caesar, hearing Lily's answer, was simply amazed that she wanted to take care of him. And Lily stood in front of him, still holding the bottle of medicine in her hands, and tears appeared in the corners of her eyes. Caesar, embarrassed, coughed, and then said that his wound was not serious enough for her to worry. At that moment, the girl standing behind the prince asked if she could leave. After all, she had conveyed to him all the messages from Prince Passard, and she needed to return to her post. Hearing about Prince Passard, Lily looked at them questioningly. And Caesar at this time replied that although he did not like it, he understood the enemy's intentions. As he let the girl go, the prince added that she should contact him as soon as she finished her work. Already throwing on her veil, the girl watched as Caesar took the medicine from Lily's hands. And then, when she left, the princess looked after her for some time. Over the neutral city of Lanjak, night fell, illuminated by the stars that shone in the night sky. Lily, sitting on the bed, watched as the prince lit a candle, and then she asked him who the woman who came with him was. Caesar responded indifferently that she was nobody, and the princess did not need to worry about her. But for some reason this answer did not calm Lily down, but on the contrary made her think. She remembered the man apologizing to her for his frivolity, and also the way he offered her something to eat before discussing anything. She also remembered how the prince said that as proof that they became husband and wife, they would share the same bed, and asked if she could trust him. Remembering all this, Lily realized that Caesar did not look like a liar at all, but she couldn't contain her curiosity and looked closely at the man, causing him to ask the girl what happened. Lily closed her eyes and looked embarrassed, and the prince sat down on a chair, getting ready to listen to her. Embarrassed, the girl did not know how to start a conversation on the topic that interested her. Finally making up her mind, Lily asked Caesar if the woman was part of his harem, and she added, "Really, when they get to his lands, she too will become part of the harem." At that moment, Lily imagined the prince lying on pillows, surrounded by beautiful women. Caesar, hearing these questions from the girl, opened his eyes wide in surprise. And then, covering his face with his hand and smiling, he said that she never ceases to amaze him. To this, Lily replied that before coming here, she had heard various rumors, but Caesar unexpectedly replied that he did not have a harem. And then, looking at the surprised Lily, he asked if she really thought that he was one of those men who kept a harem, and that he left the women in the harem on his territory and went to find a new bride. Lily just looked at Caesar in silence, and he, covering his face with his hands, could not believe that he was talking about such things with his wife. The man could not believe that there was such a misunderstanding between them and told Lily that only the king was allowed to keep a harem. He added that wealthy merchants or heads of noble families might maintain harems, but this was not common. Caesar said that his father was not one to allow his sons to display their savagery as they pleased, so for princes, this was out of the question. And when the man added that being a prince in Aslan was the same as being a eunuch, Lily blushed and decided that he was being too straightforward. Smiling, Caesar said that he should have explained his situation to her right away. Namely, that the moment he gains influence through marriage or strengthens his position by having an heir, he will immediately become a threat. That is why his relatives, including him, remained alone until now. Caesar also said that it took him a lot of determination to take her as his wife. And then, smiling, he asked if he had dispelled some of her doubts, to which he received a positive answer. Lily clasped her hands and said that after hearing his explanation, she realized that she had understood everything incorrectly and apologized. The man, hearing this, smiled and said that it was good that they had cleared everything up. And then the prince looked closely at the girl and said that he also had a question. Looking at Caesar, Lily wondered what it could be since he was acting so formal. And the prince, looking seriously at the girl, asked if she had something to tell him. Lily clenched her hands into fists on her lap, not understanding why he was asking. The girl, looking at him in fear, wondered if Caesar could have found out about everything, namely that she is just a fake princess. She looked at the man who was looking at her intently and waiting for an answer. After that, Lily hesitantly replied that everything was fine. Smiling, the prince added that if she said so, then everything was fine. The man also apologized for raising his voice at her when he was leaving the room. Caesar decided that since Lily insisted on hiding the truth, he had no choice but to force her to submit here and now. The prince explained that thinking about how he almost lost her made him angry at himself again and again. It wasn't Lily's fault, but he took it out on her. The girl breathed a sigh of relief and said that she thought the man was angry because the attack happened because of her. Hearing these words, Caesar was very surprised that Lily had come to such conclusions. And then, taking the girl by the hand, he said that she was simply drawn into a conflict with his brother. Kissing the back of his hand, the prince apologized again. Lily, looking at the man, realized that when she sees his face in front of her, she immediately becomes stupider and cannot think clearly. After apologizing, Caesar said that tomorrow they would board a ship heading to El Kimara. He added that it was much faster than traveling by land and asked her to be patient a little, and when they arrived at the palace, he would give her everything she wanted. Confused, Lily looked closely at the man's face. Her hand lay trustingly in his strong hand and seemed very small. The next morning, they came to the port where the ships belonging to the prince were moored. Lily was shocked, because she imagined the ship as similar to a small boat for fun on the water. Caesar proudly said that even in Aslan, few people had a ship of this size, and in his territory, there were about 20 more such ships. With a smile, the prince added that he would very much like to show the girl this view. As they boarded the ship, the man explained that its keel and frame were made of ebony, a rarity that was difficult to find, even in Aslan. The main mast was made of the best oak brought from the far eastern lands, and there were 20 cabins on the ship. He asked Lily with a smile what she thought about it, but the girl mentally apologized because she had no idea what he was talking about. So she looked at the prince, who was looking at her, waiting for an answer, and noticed that he was incredibly large. Caesar agreed with this and added that he wanted to hear her impressions, not just about the size. The girl thought for a moment, not knowing what else to say, but then thoughts came into her head. And then she asked whether such a huge ship could really sail the sea, and what would happen if, by some accident, it suddenly sank. Caesar, hearing this, asked with a dejected expression whether Lily really doubted the capabilities of this ship and whether she really thought that he owned some miserable vessel that would go to the bottom during the voyage. The girl smiled shyly and said that it was the first time she had seen such a big ship, and the fact that it was floating was simply amazing. Smiling, Caesar proudly noted that the true skill of a master is to ensure that this giant does not go to the bottom and this ship does not sink, unless a severe storm is encountered on its way. Lily looked at the prince with delight, and he suddenly put his hand on her waist. And then, taking the girl in his arms, he added that it was a great honor for him to see her on board his Pride. The prince shared that going sailing with his wife and admiring the endless ocean together was like a dream come true. So, holding Lily in his arms, Caesar confidently walked onto the ship. The prince's men, looking at this, simply smiled happily. The girl looked over the man's shoulder as the city remained below. She understood perfectly well that as soon as they boarded the ship, she would never return to Irula again. Neither alive nor dead, that's what the girl thought, burying her face in the prince's shoulder. Finally, Caesar, with Lily in his arms, climbed onto the deck of the ship. Caesar carefully lowered the girl onto the deck and supported her by the hand. Lily then walked up to the side and mentally said goodbye to Irula. The wind filled the sails, and the ship slowly moved away from its native shore. Lily suffered from terrible seasickness, which overcame her during the voyage. She wondered if she was destined to die like this. She hoped to get used to the rocking of the ship, but over time it only got worse. Lily experienced nausea and vomiting for 2 days and was unable to eat anything. Sitting and thinking how bad she felt, the girl suddenly felt her husband's hand on her forehead. Taking the jug from Lily's hands, the prince noticed that her temperature had risen and asked her to be patient for a little while, as he had called an experienced sailor. The sailor, sitting by the girl's bed, said that it was common seasickness, which often occurs in beginners, and there was no need to worry. And then he added that Caesar needed to make sure she drank warm water little by little to avoid dehydration. The prince asked anxiously if it was really seasickness, as he was afraid it was much more serious. The sailor laughed and said that everything would be fine, and no one had ever died from seasickness. When he came out, he told the other sailors that their master was head over heels in love with his wife. Before leaving, the experienced sailor joked that if the gentleman got pregnant, they would have big problems. Lily, hearing this, thought that this was some kind of stupid joke, because she was not even a real wife. After this, the experienced sailor bowed and left the cabin. Sitting next to his wife's bed, Caesar noted with chagrin that there seemed to be no real cure for this. And then I asked if it was true that it was so unbearable and received a positive answer. With his hand on Lily's forehead, the prince decided he had no choice, as he could not leave her in this state. The girl lay in bed with her eyes closed, sweat running down her face. The prince brought her water with lemon and asked her to drink it. With one hand he helped Lily sit up, and with the other he brought the glass to her mouth, telling her that she needed to be patient. When the man said that the trip would last another month, the girl thought that at this rate he would become a widower before he returned to his territory. Pressing Lily to his broad chest, Caesar said that he was very sorry that this had happened. The girl felt so bad that she didn't even understand what he was apologizing for. But she didn't even have the strength to tell the prince that everything would be okay with her. And even after several days, Lily's seasickness showed no signs of improvement. The girl continued to vomit, and the man handed her a jug for this. And then he wiped her lip with a handkerchief, because she didn't even have the strength for that. The man was rolling a towel in a basin of water and was incredibly thoughtful. Afterwards, he brought a basin of water, on the edge of which hung a wrung-out rag, to Lily's bed. The girl lay with her eyes closed. She was incredibly pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. The prince began to gently wipe Lily's body, trying to at least ease her suffering. After that, the man brought food on a tray, because the girl needed to eat, at least a little. Lily sat on the bed with her arms folded across her chest, watching as Caesar prepared to feed her. The girl did not understand why he went so far in caring for her. And the man, smiling, scooped up a portion of food onto a spoon and handed it to his wife. Opening her mouth, the girl thought that this question had been bothering her for a long time. Embarrassed, Lily realized that she was melting from every gesture of her husband. She understood that the more kindness the prince showed her, the harder it would be for her to throw him out of her heart. Lily could no longer deny that she had fallen in love with her own husband, and even if in the end only death awaits them, she can no longer change her feelings. Meanwhile, the ship sailed further and further across the blue sea under the blue sky. One day, Caesar set the table, saying that he had prepared a lot of nutritious food so that Lily would have energy. The girl, sitting on the sofa, listened to Caesar say that he could not even imagine that his wife could become so ill, and if they blamed him for being an inattentive husband, he would have nothing to say in response. She looked at the sandwich the prince had made and wondered if he really wanted her to get fat. And Caesar, smiling, said that he only wanted her to arrive at the palace with a smile on her face. Taking the sandwich from her husband, Lily said that she could eat it herself. At this point, the prince added that if she still felt nauseous, she could eat a candy that would help settle her stomach. Smiling back, Lily thought that the man's gaze was already sweet enough, and if he added a little more sugar, she would stick together. Suddenly the girl thought that if Marion were here and not she, then Caesar would do all this for her. Looking at the man, Lily wanted to believe that the answer would be no. She understood that Caesar had never met Marion before, and it was with her that he exchanged marriage vows. The girl remembered that the prince next to her had not slept all night talking, and it is with her and not with Marion that he sleeps every night, holding her in his arms. At that moment, Caesar took one grape and brought it to the girl's mouth. Taking it, Lily smiled shyly and admitted that it was delicious. The prince was also embarrassed. His cheeks turned traitorously red so that the blush broke through his dark skin. Suddenly the man stood up from the table, which surprised the girl, and then, asking her to rest, he said that he needed to go out for a while. Lily looked after him in confusion, not understanding what had just happened. After this, the girl stood up and went to the window, which was in the cabin. She looked out the window and thought that with every mile the ship sailed forward, it moved further away from Irula and closer to Caesar's domain. At that moment, Lily felt like everything that was happening there seemed so far away. Looking out the window, an unexpected thought came to Lily's mind, namely, that staying next to the prince forever, pretending to be Marion, is not so terrible. She would like to love Caesar and be loved in return. Lily hoped that he was in love with her too, otherwise why would he have gone so far? She felt it wasn't just because of her body. She also hoped that the one Caesar loved was not Marion Irula but Lily Bush. At that moment, Caesar, who had come out of the cabin, stood at the door and thought. He remembered the girl's reaction when he said that she didn't look like the portrait at all, and how the servant girl told him in Lagnac that she was not a real princess, and also the way she carefully covered him with a blanket so that he wouldn't freeze. The man also remembered how Lily cried on her first night in the desert. Caesar understood that the girl had deceived him, but then he wondered if she really wanted this. He remembered how he looked after Lily during her illness and wiped her body. Just recently I fed a girl sweet grapes. At these memories, his hands involuntarily clenched into fists. Caesar remembered the expression on Lily's face when she gave him her hand. At that moment, the girl completely trusted the man, and now, embarrassed, the prince realized that Lily actually believed him. The ship sailed across the sea, small waves pounded its hull, and the sun illuminated it with its bright rays. That early morning, Lily was not sleeping, but simply lying with her eyes open. Her head lay on Caesar's arm, and she looked at the sleeping man. Now that the girl is feeling better, she has started to think a lot again. Lily thought that she had never experienced anything like this before and did not understand why now, like this, suddenly. Blushing, the girl realized that now she could not pretend that she did not understand anything. Lily stared at the face of the man sleeping next to her. She remembered his vow that he wouldn't cross the line unless she asked him to, and she wondered if he would be happy if she kissed him first. Or Caesar will simply push her away with his cold hand. At that moment, the girl clearly realized that she wanted him, and the prince suddenly opened his eyes and asked with a smile if she was already awake. Sitting on the bed, the man asked Lily how she felt. The girl, thinking that she had seen him many times before, became embarrassed, realizing that she could not get used to it, and replied that she was fine. Turning to Lily with a smile, Caesar said that he was glad that she was feeling better and that the weather was wonderful today. After they got dressed, the man extended his hand to the girl and invited her to go on a short excursion outside the cabin. Coming out onto the deck, Lily saw sailors nearby who were sitting and playing cards, and then the girl looked at the water and the sky and froze in admiration. At this time, Caesar came up to her and hugged her by the shoulders. And Lily, still looking into the distance with admiration, and then said that it was very beautiful. Looking at Caesar, the girl decided that against the backdrop of the sea, he looked simply amazing. At that moment the ship rocked, and Lily along with it, afraid that she might fall, the prince anxiously grabbed her. As he picked her up, the girl thought that he shouldn't sneak up on her when she wasn't ready. And the prince, looking at the girl, said that the walk was over for today, which surprised her. Lily, hugging Caesar around the neck as he carried her to the cabin, thought about what she should do. The moon and stars in the night sky illuminated the ship sailing on the waves. Lily walked out onto the deck and approached the side. She realized that she had fallen deeply in love with Caesar. The girl thought sadly that several days had passed since that day, but lately the prince had been very busy. She remembered that the man was always there during his illness and assumed that this was why he had a lot of work accumulated. Even when he was close, it seemed to her that he was deliberately keeping his distance and not letting her get closer. Lily knew that at that moment she would agree to anything he offered. The girl was also very interested in how Caesar touched women. She understood that the man filled all her thoughts and she could no longer think clearly. Suddenly the wind blew and it became colder. Feeling this, Lily decided that she needed to return to the cabin. At that moment, the ship rocked on a particularly strong wave and the girl almost fell. but the prince's strong hand caught her by the waist and prevented her from falling. The man leaned towards Lily's face, smiled, and asked her to be careful. The embarrassed girl thanked the man and explained that the ship had suddenly begun to rock. Assuming that Lily had not yet fully recovered, the prince offered her to hold his hand. The girl explained that she didn't want to disturb him because he seemed so busy, to which the man replied that there was a small problem with the equipment, so he helped the crew with the repairs. Then Caesar apologized for not being able to join her for dinner, to which the girl replied that everything was fine. The prince, smiling, added that they had finished with urgent matters and, offering her his hand, asked if she really no longer needed his hand. Embarrassed, Lily looked down and grabbed his hand tightly. Then the prince explained to the girl that she should always be careful on deck, because even if the water seemed calm, there could be strong currents underneath. Caesar added worriedly that if he took one wrong step, he could end up in the sea. Seeing Lily's frightened look, the man leaned over and asked if he had really scared her, and then he added that she didn't need to be afraid because he was next to her. Walking along the deck, the prince said that the sea can be dangerous, but he loves it because it has a special charm that is not found on land. At that moment, Lily thought that if her husband loved the sea, then she would love him too. But unfortunately, the girl could not say it out loud. She felt warm and calm next to the prince, and she wanted time to stop. Suddenly, Caesar told what his brother had once told him, namely that when he finds his love, he will want to share his hobbies with her. And then the man leaned towards Lily's face and his lips almost touched hers. But Caesar suddenly stopped, his eyes wide open. The man pulled away from Lily and turned his head towards the sea. At that moment, the girl sadly thought that he again did not want to become closer than he was now. The prince suddenly asked Lily if there was anything else bothering her. Surprised by this question, the girl realized that she wanted to get closer to him. And then, looking at the man, she thought maybe she should just take matters into her own hands and confess her feelings to him. Lily looked at the prince, at the way he smiled tenderly at her. And suddenly the girl became afraid that he might reject her after she plucked up the courage and confessed to him. Lily didn't know what to do if he became even colder towards her. So she smiled and told the prince that she was just thinking about her hometown. To this, the man thoughtfully replied that, unfortunately, there was little he could do about Lily's melancholy. And then Caesar smiled and promised to make the girl so happy that she would not have time to miss her home. Extending his hand towards Lily, the prince added that he would always be by her side. And then, looking closely at the girl, he said that life in El Quimara would not be so bad. At that moment, looking at her husband, Lily realized that she could no longer restrain herself. Suddenly, the girl extended her hand towards the man. And then she gently placed her palm on Caesar's cheek. Afterwards, she moved closer to him and kissed the stunned man. A moment later, Lily pulled away and thought that she had done it after all, for the first time kissed Caesar on the lips. Letting go of her hands, she looked at the prince and wondered if he understood her feelings. At this time, Caesar, still surprised by the girl's actions, looked at her. Taking Lily's hand, the man thought that she was usually very shy and did not understand why she suddenly behaved like that. The girl, looking at the man, realized that he was embarrassed. So Lily placed her hand on the man's cheek again. Closing her eyes, she decided that she needed to kiss Caesar again, and did so. At that moment, the man, taking the girl by the shoulders, suddenly pushed her away. And then, bringing his face closer, he asked her if she understood what this kiss meant. A blush appeared on Lily's cheeks, but she firmly answered yes to his question. The embarrassed man cursed silently. He didn't understand what the girl wanted to say by this. And Lily stood there, although embarrassed, but she looked firmly into his eyes. Bending down towards the girl's neck, the prince suddenly realized that he no longer had any doubts. And also the fact that she doesn't play at all, and from the very beginning she took him seriously. Suddenly Caesar took her in his arms and said that she still did not understand. With a smile, he asked Lily if it was natural for a husband to teach his wife something she didn't know. After this, the prince resolutely carried the girl to the cabin. And when he brought it, he began to kiss her with feeling, and Lily responded with her eyes closed. The man, holding the girl in his arms, said that even if the end of the world came, he did not want anyone to disturb them. Then Caesar carefully laid Lily on the bed, and she looked at him, not knowing what would happen next. He looked at the girl with a gaze filled with passion. Suddenly Lily felt ashamed, and blushing deeply, she covered her face with her hands. Kneeling on the bed, the prince suddenly said that he wanted to see her eyes. And then he asked her to look at him and honestly tell him if she really wanted him. Taking the girl's hands away from her face, the man asked if she minded if they went further. And then, leaning towards Lily's face, he kissed her again. While undressing, Caesar asked to be allowed to take the initiative into his own hands. And Lily, embarrassed, looked at her husband. She unusually liked what she saw. Involuntarily, the girl's hand reached out to the man's chest and touched it. Gritting his teeth and holding himself back, the prince uttered her name in a strangled voice. Frightened, the girl turned her hand away and apologized to the man. To this, the man smiled, saying that he should apologize because it would hurt her a little. After that, he promised to be gentle with her, and Lily simply hugged him to her chest. At that moment, the girl realized that sharing the warmth of her body like this was very pleasant. After all this, while covering the girl with a blanket, the man asked if she was okay. When Lily didn't answer, Caesar suddenly became worried that he had hurt her after all. But the girl smiled at him in response and admitted that she was simply overwhelmed by feelings that she had never experienced before. And Caesar, hugging Lily, admitted that he now understands why husbands are so reluctant to go to training. The man added that he didn't want to be separated from her for a second. Looking into the girl's eyes, he said that he wanted to stay with her like this forever. The prince added that perhaps from their first meeting, what he had been striving for was to stay with her. Sometime later, on a beautiful sunny day, a city appeared on the ship's course. These were Caesar's possessions that he spoke of, El Camara. The princess was sitting in the palace leaning against pillows when a servant came to her. He told the girl news that made her smile. This was news that Caesar and his wife would soon arrive. When the ship entered the port, Caesar said that El Camara was a trading city with a lively trade. The prince received these lands when he was 16 years old and has been developing them little by little since then, which is why he is so attached to this place. Giving Lily his hand, the man added that here all her wishes would come true. Smiling, Caesar remarked that as soon as they arrived at the palace, he would order her residence to be prepared, and her clothes would be more luxurious than anyone else's. The girl, looking at the prince, thought that he had been smiling a lot lately. And then, looking into the distance, she realized that after 1 month and 7 days at sea, they had finally arrived in his city. When they got off the ship, the girl was put into a carriage and, surrounded by guards, she headed to the palace. Sitting there, she realized with surprise that she had indeed entered foreign lands. People who saw the carriage in which the girl was riding joyfully greeted her. When the carriage stopped, Caesar helped Lily out of it. And then they headed towards the entrance to the palace through a line of servants with their heads bowed. Suddenly, an advisor ran up to Caesar and addressed him by his title. He reported that his elder sister, Princess Solomea, was in the palace. Slightly irritated, the prince realized that her presence would cause trouble. At this time, the prince, turning to the girl, said that they had an uninvited guest and apologized because he thought that she was tired from the long journey. Smiling at her husband, the girl sincerely replied that she was fine. The two of them walked along the majestic corridors of the palace. After some time, the young people approached the curtain covering the entrance to the room. Opening it, they saw Princess Solomea, who suddenly said that although she did not want to, she had to greet her mistress. Sitting on the pillows and holding the slaves' chains, the girl said that she was glad to meet Caesar's wife. Blushing at the sight, the girl did not understand why the men's necks were chained. And the prince's older sister suddenly noticed that she had made a terrible first impression. She added that she didn't want to show off at all. With a smile, the woman asked if their wedding had gone smoothly, since she had heard that as soon as the order came, Caesar had rushed off like a wild horse with a burning tail. At that moment, Lily remembered that the man had said that he was not at all happy about the wedding with a member of the royal family of Irula. To this, the prince replied that no man would refuse the chance to get a wife and fortune, and he also regretted that he had married before his older sister. After this, the woman stood up and said welcome to Aslan, and then added that she was the first princess of the kingdom of Aslan, Solomea Rior Assyria. In response, Lily curtsied and replied that she was the third princess of the kingdom of Irula, Marian Erin Laura Louise Irula. At that moment, Solomea looked at the girl with an appraising glance. And Caesar suddenly said that if she had nothing more to say, then they would go. Hearing this, the first princess burst out laughing, covering her mouth with her hand. After laughing, she added that it looked like her husband was under his wife's thumb, to which the prince replied that this was his first marriage, although he was already over 30. The first princess remarked that she did not want a lukewarm reception and came only to see their faces. Winking at Caesar, she added that something interesting had appeared in the markets and asked him to send her gifts, since she was left without a husband. As she was leaving, she told Lily that she had left a gift for her in her room and asked her to use it wisely, which surprised the girl. Stopping abruptly and folding her arms across her chest, she told Caesar that in return she wanted to ask him something, namely, does he know why Passard suddenly moved west? When the prince replied that he could not answer that, Solomea decided to change the subject. She asked if it was fair that now next to him was a small, innocent baby. And then, adding that even she couldn't keep up with such a competitor, she demanded compensation. She grinned and remarked that it wouldn't be a crime, since she wasn't interested in the land, she just wanted trading territory. Solomea suggested that he give it to her, and then she would not interfere with his little paradise. After all, she really thought that his little treasure was sweet. And then she added that Caesar's wife looked fragile and suggested that she would not be able to last long, which frightened the girl. Caesar stood in front of Lily, closed her from her sister, and took her trembling hands in his hand. Standing opposite Solomea, he glared menacingly at the grinning woman. The first princess, spreading her arms, asked not to misunderstand her because she meant Absol. To this the prince replied that if she was hinting that the eldest prince was hunting for his wife, then he already knew. To this, Solomea only asked how much he knew and advised him to be careful. Lily's hands kept shaking. She was very scared. Sensing his wife's fear, Caesar agreed to give his sister the trading territory, but in exchange, she would have to do something. Solomea was outraged that the prince was asking her to accept his conditions, and then asked what he wanted. Caesar asked his elder sister to stop attacking Passard's territory. When the woman asked in surprise if it wasn't the Northern Trade Guild that hired the mercenaries, the prince replied that he knew that she was behind it. Not knowing what to answer to this, Solomea silently looked at Caesar. At that moment, she realized where the leak had come from, because she had been focused on guarding the outside and had missed her own people. When Solomea agreed to this condition, the prince said that there was something else. Approaching the first princess, Caesar threatened her never to interfere in his wife's affairs again, no matter who he decided to support. And if anyone dares to touch with even a finger what belongs to him, then he will personally finish him off. At that moment, the younger brother's eyes flashed with such a threat that Solomea realized that he was completely serious. The older sister, pulling herself together, smiled and advised her younger brother to relax. And then she suddenly said to Caesar's beautiful wife that maybe she should become the ruler of the Golden Palace so that they could see each other more often. Lily looked at the woman in surprise, not understanding what just happened. And Solomea suggested that since they were newlyweds now, she probably should have said something else, after which she added that they probably needed to live a quiet life now. Reaching out to Lily's hair, she advised her to live a quiet and peaceful life, receiving gifts from Caesar, because that way she could achieve her modest happiness. Holding the girl's hair in her hand, Solomea added that among all her brothers, Caesar was the quietest and the most insane. Still holding Lily's lock of hair, the woman said that the younger brother would be generous with his property. Then, letting go of the girl's hair, the first princess wished them good luck. After this, the woman left, and the young people looked after her for a long time. The prince, looking at Lily, suddenly apologized because they had just arrived and were already in trouble. Looking back at him, the girl smiled and asked him not to worry. Several days passed, where at night the newlyweds not only slept in bed, and during the day we spent breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. One morning, the prince asked his wife if there was anything in the life of the palace that interested her. When she answered negatively, Caesar, kissing Lily on the cheek, said that he wanted her to live a quiet and happy life, without any worries. The girl looked at her husband and thought about how beautiful he was. Smiling, Lily remembered that people said that life was too sweet for newlyweds, but it seemed to her that they had gone too far. At this time, an advisor looked into their room and, turning to the prince, began to beg him to stop idleness. The crying man added that Caesar had official duties awaiting him and he could no longer put them off. When the advisor asked him to put himself in his place, the prince sighed wearily. Having kissed his wife's hand, the man asked her to wait for him, as he would try to return quickly. With a tender smile, Lily watched her husband go. Then, sitting in a huge bathtub, she looked at her reflection in the clear water. The girl was thoughtful and calm. She scooped up some water in her palm and raised her hand. Lily thought that life here wasn't so bad as long as she was the mistress of Elkimar. But can she really stay in this territory without doing anything and greeting anyone? Remembering how Caesar told her that it was dangerous outside the palace and she could only go out with him, Lily realized that she was completely cut off from the world. She also remembered how the prince said that he wanted to assemble an elite squad of knights for her. At that moment, the girl smiled and thanked her husband. Now, sitting in the bathroom, Lily thought that it was very similar to being imprisoned in a dungeon. She also realized that she remembered this because of Solomea's words that of all her brothers, Caesar was the quietest and the most insane. Covering her face with her hands, the girl decided that every time she became happy, she began to wind herself up, and it got on her nerves. Lily, deciding that she needed to know what had happened to Marion and whether Irula's delegation had returned home safely, rang the bell. Hearing the sound of the bell, the maids entered the bathroom. They helped the girl out of the bath and began to dress her. One of the maids, holding out a small box, asked if premium oil would be suitable for Lily. The girl, looking at the beautiful bottle that was in the box, said that she didn't mind. Then she lay down on the couch, and one of the maids began to rub the oil into the skin. At this time, Caesar, with a dreamy expression on his face, was carrying a tray on which stood a teapot and cups. Entering the room and calling Lily by name, he offered her some tea. But then, feeling something, the prince suddenly tensed up, his eyes opened wide. Throwing aside the tray and speeding up, Caesar, calling the girl by name, rushed towards her. Then the man stopped, because at that moment he smelled a familiar smell. Lily, who was squatting near the bed, saw him and said that for some reason she had no strength. And Caesar, slightly angry, looked at the beautiful bottle of oil. Approaching the girl and taking her hand, he said that this was oil, a gift from Solomea. Smiling, the man added that it was ideal for massage. And then he suggested that she make the same one he had made the other day. When Lily said she had already had a massage, Caesar leaned towards her face, about to kiss her. After this, picking her up in his arms, the prince carried the girl towards the bed. Looking at the beautiful walls of the room, Lily thought that they had done it again. When they sat down to drink tea, the girl, looking at her husband, realized that despite the fact that he had a lot to do, he still spent time with her. At this time, a maid approached Lily with a tray and asked where she should put it. After ending the hunger strike, the girl saw things that turned out to be the property of Lily Bush. Lily looked at them sadly, realizing that she couldn't say that they were hers. And Caesar also looked at the girl, holding a cup of tea in one hand and some kind of document in the other. Lily, thinking that leaving the things would arouse suspicion, smiled and said that the maid's things looked like they had ended up in her luggage. Caesar, having answered that he understood everything, realized that the girl still was not going to tell the truth. After the maid left, the young people continued drinking tea in silence. After some time, Caesar, having folded the papers, asked Lily if she needed anything. Smiling, the man added that he had already told her that he would give her everything she wanted. When the prince said that if Lily wanted something, she just needed to say so, the girl smiled. The bright sun illuminated the buildings of El Khimar, and white clouds floated across the blue sky. Caesar and Lily walked slowly through the beautiful streets of the city. Looking at the man, the girl admitted that she seemed to be out of her mind. Closing his eyes, the prince agreed with her, adding that it was not surprising that she felt suffocated, being constantly within the four walls of the palace. Lily, smiling and looking at her husband, said that she was very happy that she could take a walk with him like this. Taking his wife by the hand, he invited her to see all the beauties, confident that she too would fall in love with El Khimara. They walked through the shopping arcades where jewelry and beautiful fabrics were sold. There, the prince also chose several outfits for Lily, which she tried on. They also dropped in on a puppet theater performance. As they walked through the streets, the prince jealously shielded his wife from prying eyes. Although Lily was embarrassed by this, she also liked this kind of protection from her husband. When Caesar bought some street food and gave it to the girl to try, she realized that it was too spicy for her. Walking further, the young people suddenly saw a child who had fallen on the road. Lily stopped the prince when she saw that the girl who had fallen sat on her knees. The girl came up to her and said that she was a good girl because she didn't even cry when she fell. Lily added that she was very brave, even though it was painful. The girl looked at the girl with her eyes wide open in surprise. And then she said that she must be a princess because her skin is like milk. Lily put her finger to her lips, said it was a secret, and smiled at her. The prince, watching his wife, stood with a thoughtful look. When the girl was treated to street food, she waved goodbye to them. Smiling, Caesar said that she got along well with children, and then the girl almost let it slip that she had many brothers and sisters. But she noticed it in time and said that she would like to have many brothers and sisters, and then asked her husband if he liked children. Looking at Lily, the man answered this question positively with a smile, and then, unexpectedly, he asked Lily how many children she would like to have in the future. Hugging the surprised girl, he added that everyone, at least once in their life, thought about this. And then Caesar asked how many children she would like them to have. Lily, confused by this question, replied that she didn't know and went forward. Sometime later, the prince was sitting in his office and reading documents. Holding a pen in his hand, he wrote something on the papers and was incredibly thoughtful. At that moment, he remembered his wife's happy smile when she was next to the child, and also many different moments from their walk through El Kimara. He remembered the maid's words that there were no records of Lily in Irula. Caesar sighed heavily and wondered who the girl really was. At this time, an advisor entered his office holding a pile of papers in his hands. He noticed that His Majesty's hands had stopped again, and he was thinking about something. With tears in his eyes, the advisor recalled that the prince had said that he could quickly complete his duties if he took a day off. Caesar, noticing that this was what he was doing, asked how things were going with the transfer of trading rights to Ptolemais. The advisor replied that he had completed the transfer with all the necessary documents, and then added that since this was the prince's duty, he had rendered him a special service. The advisor also said that as soon as the paperwork was completed, the attacks on Prince Pessard's territory suddenly stopped. Hearing this, Caesar thought that there was still a possibility that they would attack again at any moment, and the situation would become extremely tense. Remembering his older sister, Caesar realized that this woman was not one to back down quietly. When the prince asked about his brother, the advisor replied that he had not received any specific information about Prince Pessard. Hearing this, Caesar ordered the man to investigate, and he hurried away to begin carrying out the order. Sometime later, the prince saw the servant girl and assumed that his brother had sent her to deliver a message to him. She replied that Prince Pessard disapproved of the procedure for transferring trading rights. She then added that there was something else, and Caesar asked whether it had anything to do with the sudden departure to the west after the territorial question had been resolved. At that moment, the prince realized that his brother now knew, and even before that he had been suspicious of the chancellor and the knight's movements. The girl added that Prince Pessard asked to find out his further plans for the fake princess. Enraged, he realized that his brother had found out about Lily, and the man also didn't know what to do with the fake princess. Caesar thought that Lily had lied to him, even though she was trembling like a little bird, and the former him would have killed the girl without the slightest hesitation. But now Caesar understood that he could not do this because Lily believed him. So he asked the girl what answer his brother wanted to hear, and he heard in response that he ordered to get rid of the false princess as soon as there was no longer any need for her. Hearing these words, Caesar frowned and became so angry that the veins on his face bulged. Seeing the gentleman's reaction to his words, the girl became frightened, and the prince, sitting at the table, said that she was just an instrument for conveying his brother's words. Then he asked her if she thought she could say everything his brother had said. When Caesar said that Lily, his wife, the girl asked if he really wanted to disobey the prince's order, and when she added that the prince even suggested that she commit suicide, Caesar stood up and said that Absol had been watching him all this time. Looming over the girl, he added that even if he was just bait, Prince Pessard would benefit from it. And then, with a threatening look in his eyes, he repeated that Lily was his wife. In the girl's eyes at that moment, one could read the fear that had settled within her. As Caesar turned away and walked towards the exit, she bowed low to him. Caesar walked into the empty room and stood, leaning his elbows on the table. At that moment, the man thought about something, placing his hand on his chin. Suddenly he heard someone's footsteps, and thinking that the advisor had come to lecture him again, he exclaimed what he needed this time. When Caesar added that he wanted to be alone, he saw Lily peek into the room and ask if she had disturbed him. When the prince saw the girl, he was very surprised, because he did not expect to see her. He asked why she had come here herself, instead of sending a maid for him. And then Caesar asked if she had come alone, to which he received a positive answer. Having told the girl that it was dangerous to move around alone, the man thought that he should order the execution of all the maids and guards who had let her out of the gate. Embarrassed, Lily said that she really wanted to give him something. The girl held her hands behind her back, and the man looked at her questioningly. Lily, pulling her hands from behind her back, showed Caesar a plate on which lay something unusual. Smiling, the girl said that she asked the maids to help, but they did not quite understand her, since there was no such food here, so she directly asked the vice-captain to do it. As Lily handed Caesar the plate, she said she would go and he could enjoy it during his break. But the prince suddenly asked how it was possible to do this, and since it was the first time he had seen something like this, he asked to show it to him. After this, the man walked up to the chair and asked his wife to sit on it. When Lily sat down on the chair, the man moved another one towards her. Having placed the plate with the unfamiliar delicacy on the table, Caesar sat down on it. Lily explained that it was a frozen tropical fruit and showed how to hold it. The prince, looking at the delicacy in surprise, took it as the girl had shown. And then Caesar took a small bite of the new delicacy. After tasting it, he suddenly smiled and said that it was delicious and that frozen fruit was a great idea. Lily explained that in Arula, this was a common treat and thought they didn't have tropical fruits, but she made frozen snacks for her younger brothers. A child she met at the market said that tropical fruits were very tasty, so the girl decided to try them. Hearing this explanation, Caesar thought for a moment, remembering the child. And then, imagining their child, I realized that he would definitely be beautiful. The man imagined his wife in the garden, sitting at a table with their child. And then he realized that if they had a daughter, he would want her to be like Lily. He imagined himself entering their garden and his daughter running to meet him. At that moment, the girl called the man by name, holding a frozen treat in her hands. And the prince, imagining all this, suddenly blushed. He saw how the treat began to melt a little and some of it dripped onto Lily's palm. Then the man gently took this thing in his hand, which surprised the girl. And then Caesar brought his wife's hand to his mouth. Then the man simply licked the juice from the girl's palm. With these actions, Caesar incredibly embarrassed his wife. And then the prince could not resist and leaning towards Lily kissed her. Sometime later, the girl walked along the corridors of the palace, accompanied by an advisor. Her face flushed when she thought of Caesar. The girl thought that the child from the market was right, and the fruits here were simply amazing, and she realized that lately she had been craving sour things. Suddenly thinking about this, the girl stopped abruptly. And then, having broken away, hearing this, the advisor turned around in surprise and called the princess. And the girl, running into the room, closed the door and leaned her back against it. It was all because Lily remembered that in such a case, her mother used to say. Namely, that you start to like sour things during pregnancy. After doing all the math, Lily couldn't believe she could be pregnant. The girl tried to calm herself down, assuming that it might just be a delay. And then I thought that if she really was pregnant, could she have a child in a situation like this? Lily wondered if, after giving birth, her true identity was revealed, would Caesar be able to accept it? Her inner voice suddenly told her that it was mean to think that if they had a child, a man would not be able to hit her. Lily didn't know how the prince would react if she told him this news now. She recalled a man asking her how many children she planned to have in the future, and imagining Caesar, who was smiling then, I wondered if he would be happy with such news. And also, the girl understood that there was no point in hiding it. Lily thought that she had to tell Caesar the truth and accept the consequences because she didn't want to lie to him anymore. One day, Caesar called the girl into his office where she saw a pile of papers and asked what it was. And the prince, smiling at the girl, suddenly asked if she had slept well. And then, approaching his wife, the man unexpectedly kissed her on the forehead. And then Caesar said that he had chosen a personal servant and a knight for her, or rather, his advisor had selected them, but they were far from up to his standards. When Lily said that anyone would suit her, the prince exclaimed that he did not agree with her. And then, looking seriously at his wife, he said that she was his princess. Caesar added that he would never forget the day she took his hand. Looking at Lily, the man admitted that for him, she is an irreplaceable and precious person. These words struck the girl very strongly, and various memories flashed through her head. Everyone who is Caesar always puts her first. And the prince at this time invited Lily to choose with him. Looking at her husband's face, she thought that this man seemed capable because of his age, but he was difficult to please. Therefore, the girl said that any person chosen by his assistant would suit her. But Caesar was so carried away by his choice that he did not hear her words and decided that they needed to conduct the inspection again from the very beginning. At that moment, the girl remembered the assistant and thought that he probably had problems with this list. Having kissed the girl's hand, Caesar promised to choose personal knights so that Lily could move freely. At that moment, the girl wondered if it was for her sake or so that Caesar wouldn't worry about her. Looking at Lily, the prince suddenly asked her to give him a minute. With shining eyes, he said that he wanted to take her somewhere and show her one place. The girl looked questioningly at her husband, not understanding what he wanted to show her. Together, the young people walked along the beautiful corridors of the palace. At this time, the man said that apart from sailing, he had no particular hobbies. But he has one activity that helps him relax. As they approached the huge doors, Lily wondered what this activity was. For some reason, gambling immediately came to mind. And also, the girl suddenly thought that maybe he had the same hobbies as Princess Solomea. She was very curious about what was behind that door. When they left the palace doors, they approached some kind of curtain, which the prince opened with his hand. At that moment, Lily found herself under the blue sky and covered her eyes with her hand from the bright sun. The girl saw a gazebo, and behind it many different trees and also animals. At this time, the prince unexpectedly admitted that he loved animals very much. It is the process of taming them until they open their hearts to him, and the moment when you see their submission, that gives birth to a feeling of tenderness in him. The girl looked at the sky with delight, seeing the birds soaring there. Suddenly, Caesar put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled loudly. This whistle was heard by a falcon that was soaring high in the sky. He swooped down and landed on the prince's gloved hand. He stroked the falcon under the beak, and it closed its eyes with pleasure. At that moment, Lily saw something and her face darkened. There was a cage with 2 birds in it, and the girl asked why they were there, to which the man replied that they were a couple and the female was pregnant, so he created safe conditions for them. He added that for the sake of the female and her future offspring, they must be in a safe place. And then, with a sly look, Caesar asked Lily if he was wrong. At that moment, the girl thought that it sounded like a veiled message and wondered if he really suspected something. Confused, Lily involuntarily placed her hands on her stomach. She stood in front of the prince, thinking how to tell him everything. On a moonlit night, a man sneaked into the palace and, standing around the corner, looked at the windows. It was Lily's old friend, the knight who was in love with her, Sir Geoffrey. In the harbor stood a ship with sails. The dark sky above it was illuminated by stars. The prince, holding a glass of wine in his hands, said that he should receive something for his help. At this time, the servant who was pouring him wine spilled a little on his hand. When the prince looked at him sternly, he offered his deepest apologies. The man smiled after these words and asked the servant to be careful. He waved his hand and added that he hated people who made mistakes to the point of shaking. And at that moment, Geoffrey saw how the servant's head was cut off, so that drops of blood fell on his face. Absol stood up and said that he was ready to listen to details about the princess. He added with a grin that he couldn't help him unless he knew the details. Geoffrey, at that moment, was thinking about Lily and praying that she would hold on just a little longer. And in the morning, in the palace of Prince Caesar, the prince's voice was heard calling the girl. The man suddenly told Lily that they needed to talk. The girl, who was sitting opposite him at that time and drinking tea, looked at him in surprise. Caesar told Lily that Absol's ships had been standing in the port of El Camara for 3 days and had not moved a centimeter, while the girl wondered if she was eating too much. The man said that nothing had happened yet, but the townspeople were getting nervous, so he wanted to send people to investigate. Lily thought for a moment and replied that she understood everything, and her gaze became sad. At this time, the prince was thinking that even though he had organized security, the situation was still very risky. The man understood that nothing could be done if he left his post. Absol would try to take advantage of it, but at the same time, he could not stay here forever. Lily looked at her husband and asked if it was really that serious, and Caesar thought that it seemed like he had shown his wife his disturbing thoughts. Taking Lily's hand, the prince said that his brother was not so reckless as to cause trouble on someone else's territory. Leaning down and kissing the girl's hand, he added that she didn't need to worry about it. When Caesar said it would last a couple of days, Lily smiled. The prince rode out of the palace gates on his horse, surrounded by guards, and Lily, standing on the wall of the palace, watched his departure. Night fell. Bright stars shone in the dark sky and illuminated the palace. The maid approached the princess and, saying that she had received a letter, handed it to her. The girl didn't understand who the letter could be from, but when she unfolded it, she understood everything. After all, this letter was written by her old friend, the one who spent her entire childhood with her. Lily didn't understand why Geoffrey was there, and when she looked back, she saw that the maid had already left. In the letter, her old friend asked the girl to go out into the garden. Clutching the piece of paper in her hands, Lily wondered if everything would be okay. The girl really wanted to know what had been happening to him until now. And even though Caesar wasn't next to her now, she believed that he would protect her. Therefore, Lily, accompanied by a security guard, went out into the night garden. She saw a dark figure around the corner and realized it was Geoffrey. Turning to the security guard, the girl asked him to wait where they were staying. Leaving the guard, Lily went to the place where she saw the knight. When the girl asked what he was doing there, Geoffrey only said that he had promised to come for her. The man said that she couldn't even imagine how many times he almost died on the way, and added that he couldn't have managed it alone, so he turned to a reliable person. And then, looking at Lily, he added that she looked very good and asked if she didn't want to run away. Jeffrey shouted that she really had decided to pretend to be a princess for the rest of her life and live like this, and asked what she would do if the prince found out the truth. Lily exclaimed in anger, did he really think that she was doing this thoughtlessly, and said that she had no idea what it had cost her to take Marion's place. The girl also added that she did what she had to do. Jeffrey, hearing this, asked if she had really become attached to the prince. Looking at Lily's face, the man asked if she had fallen in love with the prince. Jeffrey, angry, said that he understood everything, and the girl had always been compassionate. And then he added that now was not the time for idle talk, which greatly surprised Lily. Jeffrey explained that they had found out where the real princess was. Lily responded sadly that she always knew this day would come, and that it was time to let go of what she so desperately wanted. Then the girl asked where Marion was, to which the man replied that he did not know the exact location, but when he heard that there was a lead, he came straight to her. He added that it was only a matter of time before Caesar found out that she was not a real princess. Then Jeffrey shouted that the Chancellor had learned of Lily's location, and he added that he then decided to pin all the crimes on her, which surprised the girl. Jeffrey said that they announced that Lily helped the princess escape and took her title to steal the title of queen, and now she won't even be able to return to Irula. He said that if things continued like this, they would find her and capture her. After this, Jeffrey extended his hand to Lily and invited her to come with him and run away together. He said that he had prepared a ship for escape. At this point, the girl apologized to the knight and said that she could not go with him. Not expecting to hear such words, Jeffrey was unpleasantly surprised. The man exclaimed angrily, didn't she understand that if she stayed, they would kill her? Lily looked up at him and resolutely replied that she understood everything, but still would not go. The girl then said that she realized that she had acted terribly towards him. Lily was also sure that he had already returned to Irula and asked why he had come looking for her at all. Taking a step towards the girl, Jeffrey admitted that all this was because he loved her. He added that he could not bear to see her die such a senseless death. Lily agreed that he was right, but she still wouldn't run away with him. Suddenly the man heard a sound and looked up. At that moment, Lily realized that the knight had an accomplice. While she wasn't looking at Jeffrey, he suddenly hit her on the neck with the edge of his palm. Picking Lily up in his arms, he apologized to the girl who was unconscious because he thought that someday she would thank him for it. A small house stood under the night sky, and a lantern hung on the door. In it, lying on the floor, Lily woke up, not understanding where she was. At this time, someone roughly grabbed her by the arm and forced her to kneel. Lily looked up to see a man sitting in front of her with a bloody sword in his hands. He looked at the girl and said that he was Absul-Tamil Aserla, the 12th prince of Aslan. Lily, hearing this name and seeing the bloody sword, was very scared. She didn't understand why he was here, since Caesar had left the palace to find out more about his ships. The girl wondered if this meant that her husband might be somewhere nearby. Looking up at the sky through the leaky roof, Lily hoped that Caesar would come and save her. At this time, Absul, playing with his sword, said that it was not easy for him to deceive his brother. The girl suddenly saw Jeffrey next to the prince, and Absul was just thanking the one who, thanks to him, managed to get her out of the palace. Lily looked at the knight with disappointment. She didn't want to believe it, but the facts said that he had actually teamed up with Absalom. When the prince asked if this was the same princess of Irula who was causing so many problems, the girl realized that he did not know that she was not real. With his foot, lifting Lily's head by the chin, the prince ordered her to look at him. Having looked at the girl, he decided that she was not so beautiful and was not his type at all. Absul added that his brother often tumbled with the princess, which meant her skills must be pretty good. So he decided to take her with him and make her his wife, because Caesar did not hold a wedding ceremony in the Golden Palace. Absul added that this means that he will be the one to make the princess officially his. At this point, Jeffrey suddenly said that there might be a problem with this. And the knight added that since she was in the palace, he was sure that she was a princess. Then he said that most likely this woman is not a real princess. At that moment, Lily realized that Jeffrey had no intention of giving it to the prince and had teamed up with him to get him out of the palace. Absul, hearing this, became angry and asked to repeat what he had said. Then he called over a servant who was standing nearby with his head bowed. When he approached, he unrolled a scroll on which was drawn a portrait of the princess. After comparing the portrait and the girl, Absul came to the conclusion that she looked like a princess. Then Jeffrey said that the princess had a servant who looked very much like her, and since he served as a knight, he could assure the prince that it was not she. Approaching the girl, the prince grabbed her by the neck and lightly squeezed her hand. And then he ordered them to answer whether what this knight said was true. Lily couldn't think clearly and didn't know what she could say to get out of here alive. She looked into Absol's eyes, full of anger, and she was very scared. And then Lily confirmed Jeffrey's words, saying that she was not Princess Marian, but not a servant. The prince squeezed her hand tighter and ordered her to tell him where the princess was, to which the girl replied that she had refused the marriage and run away. And when Lily added that she didn't know where Marian was, Absol hit her hard in the face. The prince was furious because he had gone through so much to steal her. And then Absol called Jeffrey a pathetic worm from Irula and reminded him that he promised to bring him the princess. Having fallen to his knees, the knight replied that he did not know that everything would turn out this way and could not even imagine that the woman from the palace was not a princess. Trembling with fear, he added that even now he could find the real princess. Absol shouted that he would no longer believe his words and that he had been a fool to trust the northerner. In a rage, the prince drew his sword and said that he would get rid of both of them. Swinging his sword at Lily, he added that he would personally find the real princess.